Honorable Minister of Home Affairs and Information, Gregory Nichols, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, esteemed panelists, representatives of the region, international agencies, invited guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to Barbados and to this conference to participate in this regional conference entitled Advancing Sustainable Community Resilience Through Shared Responsibility. On behalf of the Department of Emergency Management and our valued partners and sponsors, I extend a warm welcome to all. And each of you, and thank you for taking the time to join us for over the next 3 days as we engage in meaningful dialogue, one of the most important issues facing our region and the wider international community. Your presence here demonstrates a shared commitment to the strengthening of the resilience of our communities and ensuring that they will be better prepared to withstand, adapt to, and recover from the many hazards and challenges of our rapidly changing world. The Caribbean continues to face increasingly complex and interconnected risks: climate change, stronger and more frequent extreme weather events, public health emergencies, economic shocks, environmental degradation, and technological disruptions all remind us that resilience can no longer be viewed solely through the lens of the disaster response practitioners, but rather it must be embedded in every aspect of our national development, community planning, and public policy. This conference is convened under the theme Advancing Sustainable Community Resilience Through Shared Responsibility, and I ask that as you hold these words, shared responsibility, at the forefront of everything we do over the next 3 days. Today's conference recognizes that governments alone cannot build resilient societies, but sustainable resilience required collaboration among government agencies, local authorities, the private sector, academia, civil society organizations, regional institutions, and most importantly, persons at the community level themselves. And over the course of the next 3 days, our program begins with a featured speaker and a high-level panel discussion, which is aimed to address the transformational Caribbean leaders so are steadfast in advocacy and global leadership, who has elevated the voice of the small island development states, and we therefore look forward to your rapt attention and participation. The conference will also explore innovative approaches, exchange best practices, shared lessons learned, and identify practical strategies that strengthen partnership and empower communities to become more actively participants in managing risks and building resilience. We will also examine a range of critical topics, including disaster risk reduction, climate adaptation, sustainable development, social resilience, community engagement, innovation, and the importance of shared responsibility in creating safer and more resilient communities. Our objective extends beyond dialogue. We hope that every participant will leave this conference with new knowledge, stronger professional networks, and practical ideas that can be translated into action within your own individual organizations and communities. The conversation we begin here should continue well beyond the conference and this venue, resulting in stronger partnerships, improved policy, and tangible initiatives that enhance resilience across the Caribbean. As we commence this conference, let us approach our discussions with openness, curiosity, and a willing to learn from one another. The challenge, therefore, before us is significant, but they are not insurmountable when we work together with a common person. Once again, I welcome each and every one of you, especially our overseas delegates to Barbados and to this conference, and I wish you a productive, engaging, and rewarding conference experience. My name is Selvin Brooks. the consultant for the Department of Emergency Management with some level of responsibility to the Community Resilience Program. And I want to extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you, especially those persons who are here for the first time. We have some housekeeping matters. Each and every person would have received a conference document. I want to urge on you, there are 3 forms which we would like you to make sure and fill out. Why? Because that is going to help us with our logistical arrangements. The request form for the tour, we need that in by midday so that we can finalize transportation for the tour on the 3rd day. So I sincerely hope that we have your full cooperation on that. The evaluation, some of you are not staying for the full 3 days, but when you know your last day, fill out the evaluation form and leave it at the registration desk. And the registration form is for our internal arrangements to make sure we know who have participated and attended the conference. At this point of the program, let me welcome the Director of the Department of Emergency Management, Ms. Carrie Hines, to give her opening remarks.
Thank you, Master of Ceremonies. Minister of Home Affairs and Information, the Honorable Gregory Nichols. Ms. Elizabeth Riley, Executive Director, Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency. Dr. Evangeline Ennis-Springer, Director of the Disaster Risk Reduction Center, University of the West Indies. Ms. Virginia Andrade, Program Manager, Disaster Risk Management Delegation of the European Union to Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, and covering relations with the EU's Caribbean overseas countries and territories. Ms. Donnell Belgrave Young, Manager of Direct Sales and Support Services, Sagicor General Insurance. Mr. Selwyn Brooks, Conference Coordinator. Conference Support Staff, Heads and Representatives of Agencies and Organizations, District Emergency Organization Chairpersons and members, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, conference delegates, the media, good morning and welcome. It is certainly a pleasure to welcome you here this morning to the 2nd Annual Community Resilience Regional Conference, which has been convened under the theme, Advancing Sustainable Community Resilience Through Shared Responsibility. These 3 days represent an opportunity for us as a collective to share, learn, and collaborate on enhancing our community disaster resilience mechanisms and ultimately building resilience at the community, national, regional, and international levels. A coordinated whole of system response to support people before, during, and long after disasters. This, I dare say, is one of, if not the fundamental goal of our community disaster resilience program and mechanism. This then begs the following questions. What are the actions that needs to be taken by the stakeholders at the various levels to ensure community resilience? How do we position ourselves to assist? How do we respond to the needs of the community? How do we support communities in their respective resilience journeys? How do we address issues of equity, inclusion, diversity, resource management, community engagement, sustainability, social cohesion, and preparedness? Are we effectively attuned to the experiences on the ground, within communities? And are these lessons being used and applied to prejudice our policies and program space? I hope that attendees will actively participate by sharing your unique perspectives. It is also my hope that the discussion will be a catalyst for action, innovation, transformation in the echelons of the disaster management and resilience space. Disasters can have an impact on every aspect of people's lives. How we as individuals experience before, during, and after a disaster event can vary greatly. Our preparedness, response, and recovery journeys will essentially be non-linear. But we must place communities at the heart of any solution and pathway we follow to ensure resilience. Our planning and response must be evidence-based. Consistent, continuous learning and improvement must occur within our community and national spaces. I am therefore utilizing this platform today to urge all stakeholders to commit to ongoing partnership and proactive collective action. It would be remiss of me not to mention and express my immense gratitude to all our partners who have come on board to meaningfully contribute to what I hope will be yet another successful initiative, but more so, an investment in our disaster risk management system at the grassroots level. Again, I welcome you and thank you for taking the time to contribute to the dialogue and subsequent tangible actions, all in the name of community resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Director. Before we continue with today's program, I would like to acknowledge and sincerely thank our valued sponsors and partners for their generosity and their support in making this conference possible and for their commitment to strengthen resilience across the region. At this point in time of our program, I will call on our sponsors to give the sponsors' remarks. In this order, we will start with Her Excellency Ambassador Fiona Ramsey, and then Ms. Donnell Belgrave Young from Sagicor, and Dr. Evangeline Springer Ennis Springer from the University of the West Indies Risk Reduction Center. Let us give an applause for Ms. Fiona Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honorable Minister, Mrs. Carrie Hines, Director of the Department of Emergency Management, Mrs. Elizabeth Riley, Executive Director of CDIMA, colleagues from Sagicor, distinguished delegates from Barbados and across the Caribbean, representatives of regional and international organizations, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a great honor to join you today on behalf of the Ambassador of the European Union, Mrs. Fiona Ramsey, as we open this important regional conference on community resilience. Allow me first to congratulate the Department of Emergency Management for its leadership in convening this conference and to thank CDIMA to support this important regional initiative. Bringing together communities and development partners and private sectors reflect exactly the kind of collaboration needed to build a more resilient Caribbean. The theme of this conference, Advancing Sustainable Community Resilience Through Shared Responsibility, could not be more timely. When we speak about resilience, we know that resilience begins much than anything at home. It begins with people. The neighbor who check the elderly living close by, the fishing community that understand when the sea is changing, the teacher who prepares the children, but the children who in turn prepare their parents. Communities are always the first responders. They experience disaster first, and they are the first to begin and to start recovery. This is why this conference really matters. 28 years ago, I met a young girl whose village had been buried by a mudslide. She lost her entire family and suffered life-changing injuries. We have remained in touch since then. What has stayed with me the most is not only her story of survival, but something she once told me. No one ever really asked us what we needed. That simple sentence reminds us why community resilience is so important. Communities know exactly their vulnerabilities, they know their strength. Our responsibility is to listen collectively, as you mentioned, and to turn their experience into better policies and better preparedness. Recent events, hurricanes, and others have reminded us how quickly lives can change. But they have also reminded us that resilience is built long before the first warning is issued. It is built through planning, through partnership, and above all, through trust. This is the vision that guides the renewed partnership between the European Union and the Caribbean. And I want to mention the special role that Barbados has played in this renewed partnership. Through the dialogue between Prime Minister Motley and President of the European Commission, we are working together not only to recover from disasters, but to anticipate them, strengthen preparedness, and build lasting resilience. That dialogue is already producing concrete results. We are preparing a new generation of initiatives to improve weather forecasting, climate services, logistics, and public-private cooperation for disaster response and recovery. We also provided support after Hurricane Beryl to strengthen recovery and resilience in the fishery sector. And regionally, we are also supporting CDIMA, CIMH, strengthening different aspects of disaster risk management. The recent study visit to Europe also by the Department of Emergency Management and other partners present here in the room is another example how we are learning from one another, because resilience has no borders and we have shared vision of mutual benefit of these exchanges. And as Europeans, this partnership, is also deeply personal. Several European territories are part of the Caribbean family facing the very same hazards and climate challenges. As you begin your discussions over the next 3 days, I hope one question remains at the center of every conversation. And it goes a bit in line with what you mentioned. How can we ensure that our communities are better prepared tomorrow than they are today? The answer will not come from one government, one organization, and certainly not from one international partner. It will come from the partnership, from the shared responsibility, and from listening to the people whose lives themselves they want first to protect. The European Union remains a trusted and long-term partners of Barbados and the Caribbean. Together, we are not simply preparing for the next hurricane season, we are building communities that are stronger, more connected, and better prepared for whatever tomorrow may bring. I wish you a very productive conference and discussions that will translate into hopefully real improvement for the communities we all serve. Have a good day. Thank you.
Protocol having been observed, good morning, everyone. On behalf of Sagicor General Insurance, it is a pleasure to be here at the opening of the Community Resilience Regional Conference and to thank the organizers for creating this important space for learning, collaboration, and action. At Sagicor General, we know that resilient communities achieve better outcomes when people are prepared, informed, and connected. They are better able to withstand challenges, recover quickly, and emerge even stronger. This benefits not only individuals and families, but entire communities and economies. As an insurance company, we see resilience from a unique perspective. Insurance provides an important financial safety net when the unexpected happens. But true resilience begins long before a claim is even made. It starts with planning, reducing risk, making informed decisions, and investing in preparedness. That is why we are proud to support initiatives like this conference. Building resilience is not the responsibility of any one organization. It requires partnership amongst governments, businesses, community groups, and citizens, all working together to create safer, stronger, and more sustainable communities. Over the next 3 days, the discussions will help move us from simply responding to disasters to proactively preparing for them by sharing knowledge, strengthening partnerships, and embracing practical solutions. We can build communities that are better equipped to face whatever challenges lie ahead. At Sagicor General, we remain committed to playing our part, not only by providing protection when it is needed most, but by supporting efforts that help reduce risk and strengthen across the community's resilience. Thank you for allowing us to be part of this important initiative. I wish you, everyone here, a productive conference and meaningful discussions that inspire action long after this week. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Protocol already established. I want to bring you some greetings from the University of the West Indies Disaster Risk Reduction Center. So quite a lot has already been said. So I'm going to turn that page and not say that, and to go straight into this piece to say that resilience isn't only about infrastructure, the buildings, the things that we can see and feel and touch, the early warning systems, whether you have the CAP app on your phone, what you are able to use, or even disaster responses we would have heard from Sagicor in terms of their commitment. It is really about how fisher folk who may have been impacted, like what we saw in Beryl a few years ago, how they can really rebuild after that impact. It's about that small business who was right at the cusp, but how they're trying to figure how they can reopen after they have also been significantly impacted, and to be able to figure out how they're going to be able to do that in the shortest possible time, because we realize that that's their livelihood. It's also about that single parent, male or female, that has children, how they're going to be able to continue to survive and to provide for their families after they've been significantly impacted and lost everything. It's also at the government level, in terms of if they have the fiscal room to be able to respond without mortgaging their future and the future of the young people. It's really about how we are collectively working together. So what I'd say here is that resilience begins with you. It begins with me. It's that I that we have to identify with. But as it is identified and begins with that one person, it must be sustained by all. So it starts with you, and collectively, we are able to sustain it. So as I bring this few remarks here to a close, I want to leave you with a question. And it's more than just a question, it's really a personal call to action. What is one resilient action that you can commit to? Don't worry about who's sitting next to you. Don't worry about who's in your family, what they're doing. Don't worry about what Ms. Hines is doing at the Department of Emergency Management. Just think, what is that one action that you can do? Don't even worry about what the minister is going to be able to do. What can you do? And after you have identified that one action, I want you to figure out how you're going to be able to sustain it over the coming weeks. We're in the hurricane season, and although we look at multi-hazard, we are going into the most active part of the hurricane season. And the answer to that question lies deep in the bellies of every person that's here. So I encourage you to move it from your belly, bring it to your mind, and move it to your hands and your feet so that you're able to take that action. And what I say to you as well, too, is capitalize on the networking opportunities that you have in this room. This room is a partnership incubator. Figure out how you're able to, when you take that information out of your belly and move it into your mind, how you're going to be able to move that action forward and capitalize, as I said, on those. So we at the Disaster Risk Reduction Center from the University of the West Indies remain committed to not only support the Department of Emergency Management here in Barbados, but we also support the rest of the Caribbean as well, CDEMA as well. And we support the district emergency organizations. We see quite a few of them here. But what we want to do is to ensure that we have packaging with the National Disaster Coordinating Mechanism, products, as well as programs at our Disaster Risk Reduction Center that we can support you, because one of the ways that you're able to move ahead with resilience is that you have to understand what to do. So with these few remarks, I want to thank Ms. Hines and her team and the conference coordinator for the opportunity to partner with you in this wonderful partnership incubator. Thank you.
Can you have another round of applause for our sponsors? But it is because of their generosity and their kindness that this initiative became possible that we're here today. As part of our commitment to building a culture of resilience, we recognize that investing in our young people is an investment in the future of our communities. Last year, this conference established 2 scholarships for the students of the Barbados Community College in the name of the District Emergency Organization. I think that deserves a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. It is the first initiative, and I'm very glad that this year we were able to continue to sustain that level of sponsorship, and we have even increased the numbers of persons who are awarded of this scholarship. These scholarships recognize academic achievement, community service, and a commitment to disaster preparedness and community resilience. Today, we are going to honor 3 students in this year's scholarship awards. I will now call on our Honorable Minister, Gregory Nichols, if you can come forward so that you will be able to do the presentation. The 3 scholarship awardees, Aria Simmons, Ramona Ford, and Quintery Jones. I hope I pronounced it. Don't go yet, don't get it. Though the document in terms of their sponsorship has already been presented to the community college, and this is an opportunity for them to take a photo with our Honorable Minister. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to give them all another round of applause for their academic, and sincerely hope that as they continue their quest for completing their studies, because this scholarship is going to go into 2027 when they will be graduating. Thank you very much. Yes. I now call on our Honorable Minister, Mr. Gregory Nichols, the Minister of Home Affairs, to give his remarks. Let us welcome the Minister to the podium.
Thank you, Selwyn. I want to acknowledge the presence of a number of our important partners and distinguished people here today. I'd like to acknowledge the Executive Director of CDEM, one of our real partners in Barbados, Miss Elizabeth Riley, Dr. Evangeline Innes-Springer, the Director of Disaster Risk Reduction the Center at the University of the West Indies, Ms. Carrie Hines, of our hardworking Director of Emergency Management, Ms. Virginie Andre, the Program Manager for the Disaster Risk Management Delegation of the European Union to Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean States, Ms. Donnell Belgrave-Young, Manager of Direct Sales and Support Services at Sagicor General Insurance. Sagicor General Insurance, yes. One of our sponsors, Mr. Brooks, the conference staff, all the heads of representative organizations, our overseas visitors, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and of course, my favorite, the media. Notwithstanding the editorial in one of the dailies today, they're still my favorite people. We contemplate community disaster resilience daily in our respective avocations. But when we contemplate it seriously, several concepts and ideas emerge. These are including but not limited to local readiness, the importance of social cohesion, and actionable steps for preparing our neighborhoods, our villages, and our communities against the various hazards. I'm sure that when we observe the happenings in the world as it relates to the current spate of the disasters unfolding around the globe, we think as to how we will be able to manage these situations when they come home knocking on our doors. Local preparedness and adaptive strategies reduce the fiscal, social, and environmental costs of disasters, ensuring continuity in economic activities and public services. It is therefore quite apparent that empowering the communities is a pathway toward building national disaster resilience. We gather today not just as individuals, but as the heartbeat of the various communities. Our communities have weathered storms, droughts, floods, COVID-19, fires, volcanic eruptions, and changing climates before. But today, we must adopt and maintain a forward-looking, visionary, and solutions-oriented posture. We are here to discuss disaster resilience. Of course, our collective ability to prepare for, withstand, and bounce back stronger from any crisis is apparent. But from my ministerial vantage point, I see community resilience as not merely a response mechanism, but as a strategic national development imperative. By empowering local communities, fostering adaptive capacities, and aligning local actions with national strategies, countries can enhance economic stability, social cohesion, and sustainable growth, while reducing vulnerability to disasters and the systemic shocks that are caused by these disasters. It is true that when disaster strikes, the first responders are rarely the ones in uniform. The true first responders are the people sitting right next to you. Your neighbors, your friends, your families, yourselves. So my core message to you all, the audience here this morning, is that social cohesion, above all else, and preparedness are the underlying foundational pillars in advancing any nation's resilience. True disaster resilience does not come from government plans, however well designed, or emergency programs, or the supplies that are delivered to people. It comes from our shared connection with one another as human beings. Social cohesion is therefore our greatest asset. And I underscored that point by saying we have a number of volunteers within our system in Barbados. We have a number of trained personnel under the watchful guidance of our consultant, Mr. Brooks. But what happens when those very volunteers and district emergency organization personnel are themselves affected negatively in a disaster? Who takes up that role within the community to bring immediate help to the people of the community who need it most? Knowing the people on your street, checking the seniors and the vulnerable persons, and sharing local knowledge are therefore vital threads that hold our communities together when the unexpected happens. That is why the Community Disaster Risk Management Program, which falls under the aegis of the Department of Emergency Management here in Barbados, a department under my Ministry of Home Affairs and Information, is critical and expansive in its features of government's work program. It signals, along with community resilience programs, initiatives, government's commitment to building resilient communities, infrastructure, and people. Our communities are defined by strength and solidarity. We know that through sports, we know that through cultural activities. But to build a truly resilient community, we must focus on a number of core pillars. And I want to identify these, and these are things that I believe we all understand and know. Leadership. We need to encourage strong, practical leadership to get the job done. Investing in our people by allowing our volunteer groups to grow and prosper. Secondly, communication. Good communications and feedback supported by a robust information network are essential. For example, establishing a reliable network to check on vulnerable neighbors and to share clear factual information during crises is important. Thirdly, preparation. Taking individual responsibility by building emergency kits, having a family plan, and participating in local emergency management and safety training becomes essential. Preparation, preparation, preparation cannot be stressed too much. Fourthly, the value of partnerships and collaboration. Establishing, building, and maintaining them are important. I note in relation to partnerships between the community and government that success depends on good two-way contact and engagement. So certainly, as it has been my experience as Minister of Home Affairs and Information in Barbados, that we have had very good, strong partners between the government, the NGOs, the regional and international agencies, and a number of the community organs and people who just generally want to be there. In fact, there are a number of emerging NGOs in Barbados who are knocking at our door and are really there to try to help out in building out this resilience capacity. At a practical level, within the community working setting, working with local businesses, the shops, the mini-marts, supermarkets, the churches, the faith-based organizations, emergency services, and civic organizations to ensure our resources are distributed when they are needed most. We can seek examples from those persons recently engaged in the rescue and recovery efforts in Venezuela after the devastating effects of the earthquake. We could go back to last year to Hurricane Maria in Jamaica, where, Melissa in Jamaica. Maria was an earlier hurricane, my apologies. And you can tell I'm going off script here. the vivid impacts for those persons who went on the ground and saw a sense of desolation and hopelessness in the eyes of people for long 2-3 weeks after the impact of the hurricane speaks to the importance of building these partnerships and being able to take care of people and distributing resources in a way that is ethical and fair. Fifthly, being flexible in our programming and our understanding and our practices. I've asked the Department of Emergency Management to continue to work with our partners to redesign our disaster resilience programs and practices. Look at the legislation, how we can improve it, look at our practices, how we can get more people to volunteer and train people in disaster resilience and all of the things that are necessary. But we ourselves have to be flexible and also have to encourage flexibility, recognizing the effectiveness of harmonizing a range of community responses. This also should allow for trusting local-led initiatives and organic responses. And that is important. Central government will not have all the answers. Local people on the ground will know the community much better and how to effectively reach those persons who are vulnerable and need it most. We must move forward together as a cohesive unit, ensuring that community resilience is not just a concept on paper, but it comes to life through our collective actions, whether these actions occur at the legislative and policy levels, the agency, operational and technical levels, or at the community or individual levels. I want to challenge everyone here today to take one concrete step forward this week. Review your own community resilience programming, and if you don't have any idea about what your community has in terms of its own resilience programming, get involved and build one. Ensure that they are fit for purpose when you're reviewing it or when you are constructing it. Rather, fit for enabling success. Review your own emergency preparedness plans for your homes. Or better yet, volunteer to help your local district emergency organization, and if you have even more time, the Department of Emergency Management, to map out the community's local resources, the vulnerabilities, and the risks and evacuation routes in the event of any hazard or emergency. Our strength as people originates from us being individuals, but the power of any individual is reflective in how we view ourselves as part of a community. But looking out for one another and planning together, we ensure that no matter what challenges come our way, our communities will stand firm, support each other, and rebuild together. Communities are at the heart of disaster risk management. Building community resilience to risks must be all-encompassing. We must investigate and action the bottom-up approaches that will inform policy decisions and national priorities. Barbados is committed to sharing and learning lessons from our regional and international partners on community and resilience building. I look forward to hearing the experiences and perspectives of those present here today at the conference. And while I admit that I have to run off to another engagement, I will be expecting the conference report as part of what we consider in the emergency section in the ministry. I will see this forum as a truly valuable learning opportunity as we all increase our understanding of what makes communities and nations resilient in the face of today's challenges. I take this opportunity as having responsibility for disaster management at the ministerial level to not only thank you for your presence here today, but for your commitment to what I have expressed. I hope that you will achieve your contribution towards the discussions, towards building resilient communities, resilient systems, and building resilient nations among a resilient people. I'd like to thank you for your patience.
I think we can have a better round of applause for that, especially since we were very privileged to have our minister who is responsible for the Department of Emergency Management. And as he has indicated in his speech, he has to go on to another engagement. But before, I hope that you will have time to join with us as we take the opportunity to capture this moment with an official conference photograph. So I now invite the minister, our distinguished sponsors and guests. Because of the limitation of space in here, it was decided that the conference photograph will be taken just outside in the foyer so we can have that type of visual of every person. So let us quickly traverse to the foyer outside so we can have the photograph taken. At the end of that, we have a short break, and then we will resume with our technical session with our panel discussion. Thank you very much. Mr. Minister.
Here with the Barbados Fire Service, we are always ready and eager to help and serve you. But you have to do your part too.
There is so many important things that we need to do in our homes to make it a safe place. In most recent hurricanes, many people's roofs were damaged. Have someone come and inspect your roof and ensure its stability. You can also make your home a safe place by trimming tree branches, cleaning gutters, installing window shutters as well as window straps, and most importantly, buying insurance for both your home and your property. Do not wait to the last minute to do these important things. Hurricane season is here, but together we can be prepared.
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
This message is for seniors, and it's coming from a senior. Today we're going to have a conversation around how we can prepare. Important during this hurricane season that we prepare our homes for the season. So if your roof needs straps, now is the time to do that. If you recognize that there's some loose galvanized sheets, now is the time to fix those sheets. If you recognize that the water, you need containers to store water. If we recognize that our properties cannot withstand the winds, identify the closest shelter to you and share that information with a neighbor, share it with a family member, but don't just pick up and go to the shelter. Let somebody know exactly where you're going. Our first assignment as we speak today, we need to pack our emergency kit. In addition to the food and the water that we will take, what's very, very important is our medication, because most of us are on some kind of medication. So it's important that you take your medication with you and also your personal documents in plastic. You put them in some Ziploc bags, so you walk with your passport, you make sure you have your ID card, make sure you have your ATM card. We need to make sure we have our torch, and we have extra batteries. We need, if we are wearing, if you need feminine hygiene, or if seniors, you're wearing the diapers, you need to pack those as well. And in this emergency kit that you're packing, you don't go in there for anything at all. Put the little alcohol, put the smelling salts, put the Panadols, food stuff like the canned tuna, and you know that you're not going in there. And of course your medication will be in there. And equally important, if you like to read, or if you like to do travel, or if you like to fix puzzles, put some form of recreation in that emergency kit as well. Because you're not going to be just sitting down listening to the wind howl. You need to engage your mind and to take it away from what's happening on the outside. You need to get into a mode of preparedness, and it must start now. As I speak, we must prepare today because we don't know what tomorrow brings.
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management. This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
Today we will learn about hurricane alerts. Are you ready? I am Samalka Jackman, the Senior Meteorologist at the Barbados Meteorological Services, also known as the Met Office. So at the Met Office, we use 4 colors to just tell you what to do. Very simple. Green, no action. Yellow,
be aware.
Orange,
Be prepared.
and red,
Take action.
ask your mommy if she has a hurricane preparedness kit at home. Does it have a flashlight? Does it have a battery operated radio? Does it have a first aid kit? Be prepared. Hurricane season is here. Together, we are better prepared.
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
Hi, I'm Ashley Leach. I have a disability, cannot walk. Hurricane season is here. Are you ready? First, you should make your house safe. Check the windows, the roof, check around the trees. Make sure they're cut properly. Strong wind blows, it doesn't fall on your house. Let's talk about the shelters. Make sure they're wheelchair accessible and make sure they have a ramp and make sure you have someone or to accompany you up to the ramp. Let's start with emergency kits. So you guys put like clothes, food, water, medication, even band-aids, batteries to keep for the news, and most important of all, you need a flashlight just in case the curtain goes off that you can see around the house. Hurricane season is here. Are you ready?
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Seeley, Artistic Director of Dance in Africa. Don't wait for an approaching storm or hurricane to get prepared. Be disaster smart and buy a little extra in terms of canned foods and batteries whenever you go to the supermarket and store these items away safely. Have a family disaster plan in place and discuss what role each person in the house can play. Check on your elderly relatives and ensure that they have their medication, water, food, and emergency supplies.
Brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management and the United States Agency for International Development.
If he can resume, we have a presentation to make to the minister before he goes. Let's return to our seats so we can have the presentation to the minister before he goes. At this time, I crave your indulgence. At this time, we would like to make a presentation to a number of persons before we go on the break preceding the panel discussion. Our gift packages here, the first set of gift packages for the Honorable Minister, Mr. Gregory Nichols. So can the persons come forward with their package? You will notice that we have a number of interns at the department, and we have been giving them the opportunity to be part of what we are doing in every sphere of what we are actually doing at the Department of Emergency Management. So, that is one of the interns, Antoine Farrell. No doubt being mentored by our minister. The next presentation will be given to Sajikor. And this time we want to hear the interns present. This is an opportunity for their personal development. And finally, the representative from the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll just stop for a 2-minute break so that we can adjust our head table to facilitate the panel discussion. We have some light music, and we'll be back to you in 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Fire Officer Marshall. Hurricane season is here. Are you prepared?
Here with the Barbados Fire Service, we are always ready and eager to help and serve you. But you have to do your part too.
There is so many important things that we need to do in our homes to make it a safe place. In most recent hurricanes, many people's roofs were damaged. Have someone come and inspect your roof and ensure its stability. You can also make your home a safe place by trimming tree branches, cleaning gutters, installing window shutters as well as window straps, and most importantly, buying insurance for both your home and your property. Do not wait to the last minute to do these important things. Hurricane season is here, but together we can be prepared.
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
This message is for seniors, and it's coming from a senior. Today we're going to have a conversation around how we can prepare. Important during this hurricane season that we prepare our homes for the season. So if your roof needs straps, now is the time to do that. If you recognize that there's some loose galvanized sheets, now is the time to fix those sheets. If you recognize that the water, you need containers to store water. If we recognize that our properties cannot withstand the winds, identify the closest shelter to you and share that information with a neighbor, share it with a family member, but don't just pick up and go to the shelter. Let somebody know exactly where you're going. Our first assignment as we speak today, we need to pack our emergency kit. In addition to the food and the water that we will take, what's very, very important is our medication. Because most of us are on some kind of medication. So it's important that you take your medication with you and also your personal documents in plastic. You put them in some Ziploc bags, so you walk with a passport, you make sure you have your ID card, make sure you have your ATM card. We need to make sure we have a torch and we have extra batteries. We need, if we are wearing, if you need feminine hygiene, or if seniors, you're wearing the diapers, you need to pack those as well. And in this emergency kit that you're packing, you don't go in there for anything at all. Put the little alcohol, put the smelling salts, put the Panadols, food stuff like the canned tuna, and you know that you're not going in there. And of course your medication will be in there. And equally important, if you like to read, or if you like to do Scrabble, or if you like to fix puzzles, put some form of recreation in that emergency kit as well. Because you're not going to be just sitting down listening to the wind howl. You need to engage your mind and to take it away from what's happening on the outside. You need to get into a mode of preparedness, and it must start now. As I speak, we must prepare today because we don't know what tomorrow brings.
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management. This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
Today we will learn about hurricane alerts. Are you ready? I am Samalka Jackman, the Senior Meteorologist at the Barbados Meteorological Services, also known as the Met Office. So at the Met Office, we use 4 colors to just tell you what to do. Very simple. Green, no action. Yellow,
Be aware.
orange,
Be prepared.
and red.
Take action.
Ask your mommy if she has a hurricane preparedness kit at home. Does it have a flashlight? Does it have a battery operated radio? Does it have a first aid kit? Be prepared.
Because she is the CEO.
Hurricane season is here. Together, we are better
She is
prepared.
the CEO and not the president.
This message
no,
is
no, no.
brought to you
This-
by the Department
This is
of
for the
Emergency Management.
panelists.
So CEO.
CEO, not president.
Hi, I'm Ashley Leach.
CEO.
I have a disability, cannot walk. Hurricane season is here. Are you ready? First, you should make your house safe. Check the windows, the roof, check around the trees. Make sure they're cut properly. Strong wind blow, they don't fall on your house.
They're going to make
Let's
sure
talk about the
everyone is
shelter.
safe.
Make sure that wheelchair
drainage.
accessible and
So I guess
make sure they have a wrap and make sure you
Michael
have
James is
someone
here?
or to cover you up to the
Sharon
ramp.
is here.
Let's start with emergency
Granger.
kits. So
Yes.
you guys put like
Nicholas is here.
clothes, food, water,
Gerard is here, Nicholas
medication,
is here, all my panelists
even
are
band-aids,
I want to ask you
batteries
take
to
the
keep for the
seats off so that
news,
as soon as
and
Liz
most
finishes,
important of all, you
Yeah,
need
we can go
a
straight.
flashlight
So that
just
she
in
will
case
not
the
be
curtain
speaking
goes
so
off, that you can see around the house.
While Liz is speaking, you want me to
Hurricane
still
season
sit
is
up
here. Are you
or
ready?
you want me to do one?
No, I was going to bring the panelists in here.
Yeah. Why-
This
why-
message is brought to you
Yeah.
by the Department of Emergency Management.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Seeley, Artistic Director of Dance in Africa. Don't wait for an approaching storm or hurricane to get prepared. Be disaster smart and buy a little extra in terms of canned foods and batteries whenever you go to the supermarket and store these items away safely. Have a family disaster plan in place and discuss what role each person in the house can play. Check on your elderly relatives and ensure that they have their medication, water, food, and emergency supplies.
Brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management and the United States Agency for International Development.
Hi, I'm Fire Officer Marshall. Hurricane season is here. Are you prepared? Here with the Barbados Fire Service, we are always ready and eager to help and serve you. But you have to do your part too.
There is so many important things that we need to do in our homes to make it a safe place. In most recent hurricanes, many people's roofs were damaged. Have someone come and inspect your roof and ensure its stability. You can also make your home a safe place by trimming tree branches, cleaning gutters, installing window shutters as well as window straps, and most importantly, buying insurance for both your home and your property. Do not wait to the last minute to do these important things. Hurricane season is here, but together we can be prepared.
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
This message is for seniors, and it's coming from a senior. Today we're going to have a conversation around hurricane preparedness. Important during this hurricane season that we prepare our homes for the season. So if your roof needs straps, now is the time to do that. If you recognize that there's some loose galvanized sheets, now is the time to fix those sheets. If you recognize that the water, you need containers to store water. If we recognize that our properties cannot withstand the winds, identify the closest shelter to you and share that information with a neighbor, share it with a family member, but don't just pick up and go to the shelter, let somebody know exactly where you're going. Our first assignment, as we speak today, we need to pack our emergency kit. In addition to the food and the water that we will take, what's very, very important is our medication, because most of us are on some kind of medication. So it's important that you take your medication with you, and also your personal documents in plastic. You put them in some Ziploc bags, so you walk with your passport, you make sure you have your ID card, make sure you have your ATM card. We need to make sure we have a torch, and we have extra batteries. We need, if we are wearing, if you need feminine hygiene, or if seniors, you're wearing the diapers, you need to pack those as well. And in this emergency kit that you're packing, you don't go in there for anything at all. Put the little alcohol, put the smelling salts, put the Panadols, food stuff like the canned tuna, and you know that you're not going in there. And of course your medication will be in there. And equally important, if you like to read, or if you like to do Scrabble, or if you like to fix puzzles, put some form of recreation in that emergency kit as well. Because you're not going to be just sitting down listening to the wind howl. You need to engage your mind and to take it away from what's happening on the outside. You need to get into a mode of preparedness, and it must start now. As I speak, we must prepare today, because we don't know what tomorrow brings.
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management. This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will like to resume with our featured speaker. So if you could kindly return to your seats at this point in time. I give you 1 minute because we are on a very tight schedule to make sure that all that we have today can be fit into today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, our featured speaker today is a Barbadian national with over 20 years experience in disaster management at the regional and international level in various capacities. Our featured speaker has played a leadership role in the coordination of the regional responses to practically every major regional emergency event since 2004. She's also lectured in disaster management at the University of the West Indies in Mona, and has contributed to a wide range of technological advisory committees at the international level, and is currently the vice chair of the Carib Early Warning System Group of Experts on Coastal Hazards. I can keep you here for another 20 minutes sharing her pursuits and her qualifications and the wonderful work that she has done. But I know you will allow me to shorten her introduction. So let us welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and join with me to welcome our featured speaker, Ms. Elizabeth Riley, the Executive Director of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency. Let us give her a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brooks, for your warm welcome and introduction. So, Ms. Carrie Hines, Director of the Department of Emergency Management here in Barbados. Ms. Virginia Andre, Program Manager for Disaster Risk Management at the Delegation of the European Union to Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean States, and the OECS. Sponsors, I see UWIDRRC is in the room. Dr. Evangeline Innisprayer, a very good friend. I'm not sure if Sagicor is still with us. I think maybe they might have left. Okay. Good morning to the panelists who will follow. A welcome also to the National Disaster Coordinators who are in the room and other representatives from National Emergency Management Organizations. Some of our international partners are here. Good morning to you. I also want to recognize the teams from the Department of Emergency Management, the very hardworking team, and also some of the team members from CDEMA are with us today. Members of the district emergency management organizations, I see many of you are represented here today and you're out in your colors. I see some from St. George, St. George North, where I'm a member as well, so good to see you. Members of the media, of course, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. Good morning. I think we had the break, so we can say, we should be able to muster up the good morning. Okay. So it really is a privilege to join you for this Community Resilience Regional Conference. And also I want to thank Ms. Hines for extending the invitation to me to deliver the keynote address under the conference theme, Advancing Sustainable Community Resilience Through Shared Responsibility. So I always like to give praise where praise is due, and I have to really congratulate Ms. Hines and the Department of Emergency Management for their leadership in convening this conference, and of course we were very happy to support, both technically as well as through financing through the BRICS initiative, which you see up here. And I also want to thank the title sponsors for the event, University of the West Indies Disaster Risk Reduction Center, Sagicor, and of course the European Union for their support for the event. And I think that this collaboration of national, regional, international, private sector, as well as academic partners, really sends a very strong message and is very appropriate on this whole issue of community resilience, especially when we're talking about issues of shared responsibility. So congratulations, Ms. Hines, for bringing these partners together and sending that message. So today's conference comes at an important moment in the Caribbean's resilience journey. And it is timely because recent experiences with hazards compel us really to revisit the meaning of community resilience. It also compels us to revisit how we build community resilience and to question whether the approaches to building community resilience are evolving as rapidly as the communities that they're intended to serve, as well as the risks that they're intended to address. And I'll talk a lot more about that in a moment. So we all know that the Caribbean is one of the most disaster-prone regions of the world. We have almost every type of hazard. We're a real laboratory for hazards, actually, in our space. Hurricane Melissa's $12.2 billion in damage and losses, which was approximately 57% of the gross domestic product of Jamaica, is just the most recent example of what has now become a regular thing for us in the Caribbean. But what is perhaps less known is that the Caribbean has also long been recognized as a global leader in disaster risk management. We as a region understood very early that to protect our people, to safeguard our livelihoods, our economies, and preserve our development gains, that we had to pivot from a posture of managing disasters and their aftermath to managing risk ahead of those impacts. And that understanding gave rise to one of the Caribbean's most significant contributions to global disaster risk management, and that is what we call our Comprehensive Disaster Management Strategy. So Comprehensive Disaster Management, or CDM as we call it, represented a fundamental shift in the philosophy of how we address the hazards that affect us. It recognized and recognizes that disaster management is not the sole responsibility of a national disaster office, nor could resilience be delivered by governments on their own. Instead, it called for a whole of society approach founded on a simple but profound truth, that resilient communities underpin resilient states, that resilient states strengthen our region, and together they create safer lives for the people of the Caribbean. And in 2026, this year, on the silver anniversary of comprehensive disaster management, a people-centered, community-focused philosophy continues to guide our work. So I want to disaggregate the theme of this week's conversation within the context of three key questions, and I'll take us through those. So the first question is, what does community resilience really mean in today's Caribbean? So to answer this, it really requires us to revisit the meaning of community resilience. For many years, we've understood community resilience as the capacity of communities to prepare for, to withstand, and recover from disasters. Now, this definition does remain valid. However, it's important for us to understand that community resilience, it is not a destination. It's a continuous journey that evolves over time because the world and the communities that we seek to strengthen are themselves evolving. So CDEM as an institution recognized this, and in 2016, we expanded the 2009 Community Resilience Framework, which was developed by Dr. John Twiggs, and titled Characteristics of a Disaster Resilient Community, and we modified it to reflect a Caribbean context. The work in itself was not static, and as a matter of fact, we undertook a further modification of this framework and formally adopted it by our council in 2023. So the reality is that the communities that we serve today are not the communities of 25 years ago. Demographic profiles are shifting. Populations in most of our Caribbean states are now aging. According to UN ECLAC, by 2050, 1 in every 4 people in the Caribbean will be aged 60 years or older. And that is significant and has implications for how we look at our communities and the actions that have to be taken. Migration, displacement, and more recently, geopolitical influences are shaping and reshaping Caribbean communities, diversifying language, culture, and also introducing new social dynamics. Traditional support networks are evolving. Crime and violence are disrupting the cohesiveness of many of our communities, while new and increasingly complex forms of vulnerability also continue to emerge. At the same time, the risks confronting our communities and region have become increasingly interconnected. We're no longer responding to hazards in isolation. Hazards now occur in a complex, cascading, and compounding pattern exacerbated by climate change. Against all of this, a backdrop of economic uncertainty, public health threats, and disruptions to global systems, are compounding their impacts and making recovery more complex, but also more prolonged. And we've seen that in many instances in the Caribbean. So it follows that if both our communities and the risks that they face are changing, that our understanding of community resilience must evolve, not only with them, but importantly in anticipation of those changes that are taking place. So the definition of community resilience must change to encompass the capacity to anticipate the changes which are coming, to adapt to uncertainty, which is now very prevalent, to sustain livelihoods, maintain social cohesion, and continue progressing despite the complex and interconnected risks. So that takes us to our second question. What have recent events taught us about sustainable community resilience and shared responsibility? So during COVID-19, economies came to a standstill. Borders closed. Supply chains were disrupted. Schools fell silent, health systems were stretched, and families faced uncertainty. The high-risk exposure of our food security was also laid bare. The pandemic reminded us that community resilience is not simply about emergency response. It demonstrated that resilient institutions alone are not enough, and that societies remain resilient only when people remain connected and communities can retain the capacity to support one another through prolonged crisis. But we can look at other events. Successive events such as Hurricanes Melissa in Jamaica last year, Dorian in the Bahamas in 2019, Irma and Maria in many states in 2017, and the La Soufrière eruption in St. Vincent taught us that in this time of increasing hazard complexity exacerbated by climate change, that past events cannot be our measure to guide community preparedness planning for now or for the future. For Melissa, pre-impact hazard maps contemplated individual hazard impacts, but they failed to anticipate the complex multi-hazard scenarios and interplay between storm surge, which was in excess of about 14 feet, and intense precipitation, which in some instances was over 20 inches, happening at the same time, and which then rendered the utility of existing hazard maps almost useless. In other words, we were using tools of a different time to plan for the hazards of today. Beryl, the earliest Category 5 hurricane ever recorded in the Atlantic, challenged our assumptions about seasonality and, importantly, the timing within which we needed to do community preparedness, because we had always understood that we have a peak of the hurricane season that happens in September, and therefore, even though the hurricane season starts in June, we can take our time. Am I telling the truth? Yeah? And we could take our time and undertake those preparedness actions, but we had to make sure we were ready by September. But Beryl told us something different, and we have to look at the community preparedness differently with respect to timing. So all of these events reminded us of the critical role that resilience in the built environment, economic opportunities, trusted relationships, community leadership, and the ability of people to adapt together play in ensuring community resilience. Recovery in itself is ultimately sustained by coping capacities within communities. And the reality is that the Caribbean has now entered an era of persistent disruption, where community resilience can no longer be measured solely by our ability to respond effectively after disaster strikes, but increasingly by our capacity to respond effectively, our capacity to anticipate, to adapt, and transform. Not simply to bounce back, but also to bounce forward. And I also want to say that it really reiterated that community resilience programming has to be a true anchor in the country work programs that we are developing and implementing at the national level. So on to the third and final question, or maybe I should say a series of questions. So what then should we look to as the elements of sustainable community resilience through shared responsibility? In other words, what does successful community resilience in this new era look like? And what are those changes that we not only want to see, but that we need to see? So first, I would say it starts with people. Because people matter, or care for people matter, and ultimately, community resilience has always been about people. It's about people supporting people. It's about stronger community organizations mobilizing local action, volunteers giving of their time, and trusted local leaders inspiring collective responsibility. It's about creating meaningful opportunities for real engagement that are inclusive, embracing young people as contributors, as leaders, innovators, and partners in shaping more resilient communities. It is also about adopting a listening posture to hear the perspectives of those within vulnerable groups, women, children, differently abled, migrants, whether documented or undocumented, they're all a part of the community. And if people are at the center of resilience, then they must also be at the center of how we build it. So our greatest investment has to be in community empowerment as a shared responsibility, not just of governments, but also the private sector. I was really glad to see Sagicor sponsoring today. And I think these kind of actions, we need to see more from the private sector. This is not solely a government responsibility. We have to strengthen leadership, volunteerism, community organizations, and the social cohesion that enables communities to anticipate, adapt, and act together when it matters most. We must also understand or expand our understanding of behavioral science. Why do people make the decisions that they do? What is their perception of the risk? How do they receive early warning messages? Is it as intended by a meteorological service or by the seismic research center? Or are they making their own interpretations on the information that is coming to them and coming to other types of conclusions? And importantly, what are the triggers that are existing and causing persons to take appropriate action? And I raise this, and I just deviate a moment just to tell you a story from one of our participating states. And I can mention, because it was around the Bahamas, and we were discussing and reflecting on what happened in terms of the early warning and the action by populations. And the two things did not necessarily align. And so the Met Service did a brilliant job. Bahamas Met is a brilliant Met Service, I can tell you that. They were fantastic in forecasting what was going to happen, what the storm surge would be like, precipitation amounts. All this was communicated to the population. They knew that Dorian was going to stall. They knew it was going to be a very prolonged impact. And still, evacuation notices that were issued were not adhered to. And so you probably may sit in Barbados and say, but why didn't the people move? And that's a real question. And this is what we're actually seeing now in repeated events across the region, where we think we, as the Met persons, disaster management practitioners, that we've done a good job, even at the community level, in terms of you going around in your community and spreading the right messages, etc. But then the behavior of individuals sometimes does not reflect a good understanding. So is it in our communication? Is it in their perception of the risk? Is it that they're thinking about a previous event which they were able to ride through okay, and they say, oh, well, it's going to be the same as? We don't know. But the point is that we need to get a better understanding of these things. There's a need also to transform our post-disaster assessment methodologies to integrate assessment of community resilience parameters in an intentional way. When I was preparing for this, last night and this morning, I looked back actually at some of the post-disaster needs assessment reports. I know UNDP is here. And you know, in the majority of them, you cannot even get a statistic on how many communities were affected. They're going to tell you about affected population as an aggregate, And it's not going to delve into parameters of community resilience. For example, it will not talk about how did the governance structures at the community work. We don't analyze it. So the point I'm making is that if we don't intentionally undertake an examination of how community structures and arrangements work in emergency situations, we're never going to have a comprehensive learning about it, okay, and how we make it better. So I also want to challenge our academic institutions, DRRC is here, to come on board in giving further support to the build-out of this knowledge base, including through conducting real-time evaluation of community resilience during emergencies. Governance also needs a revisit. Can we realistically continue to rely on community structures that are shaped through volunteerism? Or has the time come for us to now integrate community resilience arrangements into the paid arrangements and structured of the government mechanisms? And this is an important question because we are learning in every event that the assumptions associated with the volunteerism are not holding true in catastrophic events. So volunteers, who are the glue of the system, they have to be recognized and tangibly supported. And I think here in Barbados, I see in Barbados here with the DEOs, because I'm a member of St. George, as I mentioned, St. George North, and I do see a lot of efforts being made here in Barbados to really try to step up on the program, to do training, building the capacity in the community, at the community level. And I really want to thank all of the DEO members that are here, whether you're from Barbados or from other countries, because you know, you're really the backbone of the system. And we appreciate you, we value what you do, and it's important you recognize. So innovation also is an integral part of this evolution. Advances in geospatial technologies, advanced analytics, and now digital twins, which is basically recreating countries in a digital space, which enables us to model future climate scenarios at community scales. All of these are now tools that are emerging on the global landscape. And I want to thank the EU for exposing myself, Dr. Farrell from CIMH, and a number of our regional representatives for participating in a European tour where they actually showed us all of amazing things that are being done with the technology now, which can assist us in understanding better what the risks will look like in the future, and therefore to help us to plan better. And technology also has the potential to amplify the utility of existing tools, such as the Caribbean Community Risk Information Tool. We call it the SECRET, and maybe that's a bad name. And understand how new hazards, such as excess heat, will require modified approaches to community resilience. And I guess you saw the heat waves in Europe. You were watching that. Did you see implications for the elderly? These are things we have to now be very aware of in the region. So this is the kind of vision that's reflected in SEDIMA's Caribbean Resilience Pathway through the Comprehensive Disaster Management Strategy and also our Community Resilience Framework. And I want to reiterate our commitment to continue to working with all of you to continually strengthen community resilience standards within our Caribbean space. And so I conclude. And I want to say that if we leave this conference having challenged our assumptions about what community resilience is, what it must become, if we leave with strengthened commitment to shared responsibility and have renewed determination to place people at the center of resilience building, then we will have taken an important step towards empowering our communities not only to withstand the challenges of today, but to shape the Caribbean of tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Riley. Let's give her another round of applause. One thing Ms. Riley is going to do is leave us with some information that we can hold on to and we can definitely work with. So with that, I'm going to pick up on what Liz would have just ended with. What is community resilience? What must it become? What is our commitment to shared responsibility? Is our communication for behavioral change? Does it take into consideration perception as well as cultural norms and nuances? As you leave here after these 3 days, we want you to be able to answer all of those questions. And one of the things that I say to you, you must get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because if you don't, you are not going to be able to move. So with that, we're going to move into the panel. We have a series of high-level persons, but what they're going to share with us are some very practical ways that we can continue to answer those 3 questions that Ms. Riley would have placed on the table. So I'm just going to give you a very, very brief introduction. To way at the end of the table, we have Nicholas Granger, who is the Deputy Head of Program with the World Food Program. So Nick, if you can just give a wave. We have Michael James, who is the Deputy Chief Agricultural Officer from here in Barbados. Mr. Can you give a was it deliberate that we have the James together? And we have Cheryl James, who is the Director of the National Office of Disaster Services in Antigua and Barbuda. And for those of you in Barbados, that's the equivalent to the Department of Emergency Management in Antigua and Barbuda. So Mr. James, the other Mr. James. Next to the James squared, we have Elizabeth Charles Sumer. She is the Cluster Lead and Program Analyst, Recovery and Resilience, United Nations Development Program. And last but no mean least, right here in the room with us, we have Dr. Lynette Holder, who is the Chief Executive Officer, the Small Business Association. You can just give of Barbados. And online, I just want to confirm that we have our other panelists online. Just trying to see if I can get a signal from the team. No? All right. Not a problem at all. We will move right ahead with the panelists we have. And for those of you here, so Yvonne Innes-Springer, the Director of the Disaster Risk Reduction Center. So we want to jump right into the conversation and start to unpack what we have here. So I'm going to start with one question I'm going to ask each person in a very succinct way to share your thoughts on this, and then we're going to go to some contextual questions based on your area of expertise. So we're going to start from Nick, and we'll work our way all the way up to the table. So that question to all of the panelists, and although we have the panelists here, I want you to think about it, because you also have the answer as well. And you never know, I may come to one of you to ask you the question. So the question is, and I'm going to read it just as it is because I want to maintain the integrity of the question. It says, over the past decade, the Caribbean has made significant investments in resilience. From your perspective, Nick, Michael, Sherrod, Liz, and Lynette, what has been the single most important lesson we have learned? What has been that single most important lesson that we have learned when we think about resilience? Nick?
Good morning, everybody. And thank you, Evan. How much time do I have?
Just one, Nick. Just one, the single piece that you would have learned over that time.
I would say that over the years, in terms of resilience and the investments, that coordination is very important. And coordination can be seen from different levels as well. So there can be coordination between UN agencies, for example. Remember, the World Food Program, we're part of the UN body. Donors such as the European Union have also supported and helped us in terms of ensuring that there's better coordination, for example, between the countries we're supporting, the communities, to ensure that the resources are being used and spent as they should. There needs to be coordination also within countries and different departments. So a lot of the work we do is around shock response and social protection or adaptive social protection, and ensuring there's coordination between disaster management ministries and social protection ministries, but also those who are involved in social welfare and disaster management programs, and last but not least, coordination amongst different community groups as well, and some of these groups that I mentioned earlier. So how we at WFP can work closely with community-based organizations as well as other UN agencies to strengthen them in order that they can be better prepared and respond to shocks, and not only engage with them after an event has occurred.
Wonderful. Thank you. Michael?
Hi. I'll start with here saying there's a favorite movie of mine called New Jack City. And, one of the lines in that movie is, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And we are our brother's keeper. And what we've learned is that we are not alone and we are not an island. We depend so much on one another. And I think that we must continue in that verse. In agriculture, for instance, farmers, we might think that because we're in Barbados or we're in St. Lucia or in Jamaica that we're that much different. But there's so much different, there are so much crops that are grown in the same vicinities, in the same areas, the same type of crops. And we depend on one another, not only for assistance when we have these disasters, but also for any new innovative ideas that may come along. So that dependence on one another is very, very important.
Okay, wonderful. The other, James, Sharad?
Thank you, Yvonne. I'm going to keep it short so I avoid being loquacious, so I avoid being reprimanded later. I'm thinking that we have to recognize the need for ownership of our own development narrative. I think it's key for the region to own its space in what is increasingly a rapidly dynamic shifting global hazardscape, as Liz has explained. And I think coming out of that, we've seen what happens when the back is against the wall and the traditional support avenues that we had relied on for quite a while become constricted.
Thank you so much, Sharad. Liz?
Okay, thank you. I'd like to sort of support what my colleague from UNFP has indicated in terms of coordination. I think in terms of what we've recognized, and I think we're seeing it here today, it's a shared responsibility at the community level, the individual level, government, the private sector, as well as development agencies. And I think what is really required in terms of a change in our approach is to see how we can better structure an approach for treating, well, my focus a lot is on disaster recovery, but how can we have a structured approach to integrate all of those players into the process? And sort of takes up a little bit from what Mr. Granger said. It's also important in the strong consideration for social protection and how we address this also at the community level. As has been mentioned, we're into broad modes of anticipatory action and preparedness and capacity building around, the hazards that we face. But I think a system for integrating the players. I do recall on a project working with CDEMA when we undertook a number of recovery capacity assessments in countries. A critical one, and it's for Mr. James, who just happens to be on my left side this morning, is about how he integrated the community, the civil society groups into the process of recovery and rebuilding. So I think an integrated approach and something that is set out so it's clear and it communicates to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Doc. What's that single investment piece for you?
Thank you very much. The beauty of coming last is that I don't have to repeat all that was said before. But you would forgive me if I must mention my appreciation to Kerry and the team for including the MSME sector in the conversation today. So the one thing that I think I have learned for sure, my hypothesis is that we have not invested enough. So in addition to what all the others said, I think we have not invested enough. And I am making that conclusion based on research done by the SBA, we continue to research the sector, and I'm going to do a little promotion now, right? So the remainder of my comments will be based on this study that was done.
Excellent. We love evidence.
I published, this was published in April of this year. We do this repeatedly, so this is the most recent. It's on our website, www.sba.bb. You can download it, keep a copy. But in this study, which was commissioned by SBA, funded by the IDB, the lead researcher was Professor Dwayne Devonish. We included a question on resilience, climate resilience, specifically because we wanted to have a sense of the MSMEs sector's preparedness for natural disasters and so on, and coming off of Beryl and the impact on the fishing community last year. And what this says to us is approximately 8% of the formal MSME sector had a business continuity plan. 8%, okay? 8%. We're talking about over 9,000 formal enterprises and about the same in the informal sector. So when I say that my hypothesis is that we have not done enough, it is based on that statistical load. So if all of the investment in the last few decades, and in 2026 we can only have 8% of our sector, our formal sector, having some sort of business continuity plan, yes? 62% no plan at all, whereas the other may look at, informal ways, paying attention to maybe the public notices and so on, right? But 62% with no plan at all tells me that we have not done enough. And I hope I'll have the opportunity to share a bit more from this study in the follow-up questions. Thanks.
Excellent. All right, so I'm looking directly, I don't know if this was strategic, but I'm looking directly at some of the DEOs, well decked out. And I see Doriel is trying to hide from me, but she knows where I'm coming with this. So while I pass back over to the panelists, the question over to you, Doriel, is that one single piece. So let me go to the question again. Over the past decade, the Caribbean has made significant investments in resilience. From your perspective, what has been the single most important lesson that we have learned? And that's your table work. Doriel, you can collaborate with your members at the table, and I'm going to come back to you. But we're going to go across the table here right now, because you would have exposed some piece, Doc, and I really love statistics, because one of the things we have to be able to give the evidence. So one of the questions here was really around that whole piece about the continuity of operations and the BCPs. But we have seen 8% having and over 62 not having of that massive sector. So small businesses we see here are those ones that are usually affected and probably the first ones and the last ones to recover. What are some of those practical solutions that would help the MSME sector become more resilient? So you have told us that the biggest lesson that you have learned is that there's not enough investment. What are some of the practical ways to ensure that that sector is now a little bit more resilient? And why we're starting here is because we recognize that apart from the communities, these micro, small, and medium enterprises, those are the ones that are very much on the ground. So what are some of those practical solutions?
Thank you again. Now, remember, www.sba.bb, right? Download it. So I'll go straight to the study, because we asked that question.
Perfect.
And let me preface by saying this is not a homogeneous group, as you can appreciate. So the micro firms, 5 employees or less, the medium, the small, they tend to have a different point of view and outlook. So for the micro firm, some of the solutions shared in the study include financing, right? Financing. It's across all 3 layers, but more so at the micro level. Training, capacity building, right? Micro firms were of the view that they don't have enough knowledge, don't have enough information on what building resilience looks like. When we go to the small category, they focus more on awareness building, they focus more on capacity building areas, more so than the micro firm. The medium enterprises mentioned areas such as policy support, right? Because our medium enterprises tend to be more structured, they're larger, they have staff, they many times have export strategies and so on. So they're looking at that enabling environment. The policy support was mentioned, expert advice. So we're talking about being able to source professionals, being able to source persons, subject matter experts that can give advice on, what to do. They talked about infrastructure and investment, being able to access funding, yes, but for infrastructural support. These were some of the very practical areas mentioned by the medium enterprises. So whereas all yes talked about financing, we saw a clear shift as the firm got bigger. They're looking more at insurance products, insurance products that are affordable, that can be easily accessed. They're looking at infrastructural issues and being able to have the kind of expert support, primarily the professionals and subject matter experts and so on, that can guide them even in their continuity plans, being able to prepare their business continuity plans and the like. Whereas as we go down to the smaller businesses, grants was mentioned often by the micro firm because they simply want to be able to have monies that they can, put into their operations and help with their sustainability efforts.
Thanks so much. So I think one of the things that we're hearing coming out there, that we want to be able to not only access money, because sometimes when we think about resourcing, we're thinking about, the hard dollar, but they also want to be able to have some of those SMEs, those persons to be able to do that. So I'm going to come to you, Liz. So a donor in the room may be listening to some of those practical approaches to be able to build resilience within that private sector. And we know several of them start as projects, yeah? But the big thing in terms of how do we sustain those projects when the donor purse leaves? And so the question to you is, what conditions are needed to successfully scale and to ensure that these projects become, bankable, that these initiatives can translate into national policies and that kind of thing. So moving past just the project to be able to ensure that you're actually able to scale for sustainability. What are your thoughts on that one?
A little bit of a complicated question.
Yes, it is.
Complicated question, but I would say in terms of, first of all, project development, there should be an inclusive approach. And I can give it from, my perspective, meaning UNDP's perspective. In the early build-out of projects, we do ensure that there is engagement with all players. And in terms of the project-level interventions, why they might, target particular things, there's always a very strong investment in capacity building of the institutions. And in the process of the capacity building and the initial engagement in developing the projects, to develop a strong level of ownership, whether it be from the community or from the government. And as such, I think that creates a very good environment for it to become part of what the community or the business would be doing. In terms of the noble practice as an agency, in terms of what we do, a very important aspect at the end of the project, having built the commitment and the ownership while you were developing the project and implementing the project, is also to develop a sustainability plan, because a project is obviously something with a definitive budget, a definitive objective, and a definitive time frame. So sustainability planning is a very important aspect of what we do when we close. Another important aspect, even before the sustainability plan, is for us to do validation exercises so that we can, improve a lot of the outputs of whatever intervention that we have, lessons learned, the development of strong knowledge products. UNDP is an agency that has been around for decades. We operate in 170 countries. We deal with crisis management broadly, including natural hazards, as we have described here today. And as such, we have a lot of packaged knowledge products that we use to ensure that other communities, other businesses, do not go through the same cycle over again. What we can do is to learn from some past experience, of course, bearing in mind we're working in a very technologically advanced world that's fast-moving. And so while the past sometimes is a key to the future, we have to be open-minded about new ways of doing things.
All right, thank you so much, Liz. So I'm going to go to Nick and Michael in that order. So Nick, so we are going to transition now to start to look at some of the livelihood losses. And the question to you, because I know there's a lot of work around anticipatory action. What does that mean? So how can anticipatory action and shock responsive social protection help protect livelihoods before families actually need it? So how do we ensure that that anticipatory actually happens? And if I go back to those three pillars that Liz would have spoken about, that first piece would about the three-part problem of anticipating, adapting, or sustaining. So how can anticipatory action and the shock responsive social protection help protect livelihoods before families are actually forced over the brink and into a crisis situation?
Thanks, Yvonne. So for anticipatory action, I'll first start with a definition. And Liz would have mentioned early warning systems during her speech as well. So what it is in theory is we are using forecasts, right, to trigger the release of financing or funds that allow for predefined actions to take place ahead of a climate impact, with the aim obviously to reduce the vulnerability after a shock. So if a hurricane is approaching a country, you use forecasts to say if 5 days out, and it's going to impact the country, what are some recommendations that you can start to implement? 3 days out, what are some recommendations that you can implement? So it's really tying and using science and technology, such as the forecasts and the early warning systems, to also be linked to practical solutions at the community level as well, to ensure that you can, again, reduce the impacts. The reason why we're also linking it to social protection is that governments in the Caribbean have been using social protection systems to respond to shocks for decades. So we in the UN like to say shock response and social protection and adaptive social protection by the World Bank is something new. It's not. From early as 2004 with Hurricane Ivan in Grenada to as recent as Hurricane Melissa in Jamaica, we have seen the use of social protection systems, and that's mainly because, again, they have the ability to scale up after a shock also, right, and to reach beneficiaries and vulnerable persons in a timely manner, but have also the mechanisms in place to identify and know who the vulnerable persons are. And what we are seeing now in terms of being able to move forward, we have a pilot in St. Lucia, we have a pilot in Belize as well, is that with an investment, every dollar of investment in anticipatory action, studies have shown leads to $7 in terms of saving for emergency response. And what we have found as well is a storm is approaching and governments will tell the population to, go to the supermarket, stock up on goods and to buy materials to board your houses, but there's a sector within the population that can't afford to do that within a very short time window. So if we can find a way to get, again, financing to persons and vulnerable persons who don't have access to the resources to implement these actions ahead of time, it would allow for, again, a reduced impact as you will see on the ground. And last but not least, I know I'm going over in time, I just want to give an example for what we have in Belize because it triggered recently. So we have a mechanism in place with the Ministry of Agriculture in Belize for drought. With the El Nino conditions that we've been hearing about, we've been forecasting that for the region, it's going to be very dry conditions. So what has happened in April is that based on forecasted drought occurring, we have released funding to farmers, about 500 farmers, $400 billion, which is $200 US, which allows them to take actions such as buying drought-resistant seeds, investing in water tanks now to store up, investing in irrigation systems ahead of time in preparation to the drought to reduce the impact. And I'll stop there for now.
Thanks, Nick. So I see Michael nodding his head because I'm coming to you. And Nick set it up beautifully. So the question to you, so we know the role that agriculture plays, even if persons don't always want to embrace it, you know, because it's a matter of food security. It's not just having something planted in your backyard. And so your question then, Michael, is, so you know, it's not only just a livelihood, but it's really part of the national food security system. So we are seeing you know, how the changing climate is impacting this sector. So what, in your opinion, what investments, policies, and partnerships are needed to protect farmers' livelihoods while continuing to strengthen the resilience of the Barbados food system?
Good question. Let's just say it, let's widen it, because when people talk about disasters, I think people, as Liz was talking about, looks at storms and hurricanes and floods and saltwater intrusions, but you have pests and diseases. And I think a lot of people don't even think about that. The reason why the orange juice you're drinking now is partially made with apple juice is because of something called citrus greening. It has devastated, that is why you can't find a lot of the citrus that you have in Barbados anymore. Devastated the region. The mere fact that you're using Cavendish bananas instead of Gros Michel is because of something called, it was a wilt that destroyed a lot of the banana trees. So I think persons just think about, you know, what are the shocks related to these events, hurricanes and so forth, but pests and diseases play an important part. And that important part it plays is, and I have a colleague there who deals with, and people just think about it when they think about humans, antimicrobial resistance. How over time we have used certain pesticides and these particular pests have become resistant or tolerant to them. So you're no longer going to lick them down, as we like to say. It's like if you have a cockroach that you keep on using Baygon and then it just gets up, looks at you and walks off. People get, you know, you say that, but it's very serious, because when resistance builds up, it costs. There's a lot of money you have to pay when you have to get rid of that. So these are some of the things that we have to look at. All right. So it's not just, when agriculture speaks, we're not just speaking of all of the weather phenomena, but we also speak of pests and diseases. And in fact, you can also get some of these insects that come in during storms, because of the mere fact the winds can blow them. So it's a very cross-cutting type of things. But what do we invest in? We have to look at things like protected agriculture. We have not reached the stage yet where we are like another one of my favorite shows, Star Trek, where you can just press the button and say, I want oatmeal or I want banana. That has not happened yet. So therefore, we can't transition to just everything from in-field agriculture. But there are some things that we can grow, and grow quite well, in protected agriculture. And by that I mean on the greenhouses or vertical farming and stuff like that. We must look to make sure that we have seeds or types of plants that are indigenous to the Caribbean that we must maintain. For instance, there's the Bajan cucumber. Much people in here, younger than me, might not know what Bajan cucumber. Tastes real good. All right, you have your thyme and marjoram, which are endemic. You have your belly pumpkin. There are other crops within other countries, so we must preserve those, because if something occurs where everything is wiped out, what do? The first thing people want to do is let's bring in seeds, but these seeds might not be able or capable to grow in the environment that you have here, so you need those. So the other thing that we have done at the Ministry of Agriculture, we're now going to actually open the tissue culture facility. So that's a way of making sure that you have a facility that can also clean up material so that people, and that's what I'm saying, we are our brother's keeper. If something happens in one of our neighboring countries, we can say, look, we have some sweet potato varieties that we have tissue cultured, so we know they're clean, that we can send to you. These are very, very important things that we need to look at. The other things that we're looking at that is important, farmers need something like insurance. I mean, we have health insurance, we have this insurance, but farmers always say, you know, if something happens to me, there's nothing. In St. Lucia, they now have some insurance for their banana growers. So those are things that we're looking at. Also, the whole thing of looking at ICT, looking at using a lot of technology in agriculture is also one of the things that we can look at. So there are a number of things that we can look to help farmers, to help the whole scheme, but it comes back to us being our brother's keeper and keep on retaining that. If you go overseas and you see something pretty, leave it. A lot of pretty things are dangerous. Thanks. People, they go overseas, and this could be a number of different things, all right? But they like to see a good flower or to see another variety, and they want to come back and show off on the neighbor, right? But they don't know what they've brought in, because a lot of these disease problems I cannot see by the eye.
Yes.
All right? So these are things that we must be cognizant of, and we must broaden the whole narrative to not just include weather, but they're also pests and diseases and things like, as they say, AMR, antimicrobial resistance.
Thank you so very much, Michael. So you're really building into those three pieces that Liz gave us to chew on. That's, that's one of the things that Liz is going to do. So we are going to bring in, at this point in time, the governor from the Central Bank of Barbados, Dr. Kevin Greenidge. I'm not sure if you're able to hear me. Is he able to hear me? If you can just give me
Good morning.
Hello.
Yes, good morning. I can hear you. Thank you very
Perfect. All right. So you've just heard about some of those. Not sure how long you were on, but you've heard at least some of the pieces. Okay, some of the pieces from the Ministry of Agriculture. So the question to you is, why should investment in resilient livelihoods and communities be viewed as important for Barbados' long-term economic resilience? You want to throw you right in at that piece. Why is it important?
Thank you very much. This is a good question, and perhaps you should see it as once you're protecting livelihoods, we're protecting wider economy. For example, take fishing. A boat is not a mere asset. That boat supports a fisherman, it supports a crew, it supports the market vendor, the processor, the household that fisherman belongs to, and the community. So if the statistics are, if I can mention statistics, after Hurricane Beryl hit, 41 of the 6 businesses operating in the Bridgetown Fishery Complex were affected. 41 of 6. And when businesses like that can't reopen, what happens? Incomes, they decline. The loans they have in the financial sector, they are unable to pay on some cases, some go into delinquency, so loan repayments weaken. The revenues that government will get from the sector fall off. And government then is called upon to support the economy. So you can see the link there. And that is why investing, as you say, in resilient livelihoods is exactly equals to investing in economic continuity. For the fisher folks, what that means, it means things like safe harbors, stronger vessels, emergency communications, and the appropriate insurance. For the farmers, it will mean things like climate smart production, water security, crop protection, even access to working capital, which is also very scarce. And for the small business, it means having continuity plans, it means emergency savings, and it also means reliable financial services that can help them to grow the business. In a nutshell, the faster resilience is about bouncing back and bouncing back quickly. And the faster people return to productive activity following an event, a disaster, the smaller the long-run economic and social costs of that disaster. And that is why investing in livelihood and resilience livelihoods in communities is actually directly related to investing in all long-term economic resilience.
Thank you so very much. Let's widen it a little bit outside of Barbados. So I'm going to come to you, Sherrod. So your question really is bringing on your experience in Antigua, and we heard the ministers speak about 2017 experience. And like Barbados, Antigua also serves as a sub-regional focal point. Yeah, like Barbados, as part of the SADIMA system. So what are some of those key lessons that you can share with the Barbadian stakeholders here and, you know, the wider Caribbean on strengthening livelihoods, but taking it from the lens of CDM, all hazards, all people, all phases? What are some of those things that you can share from your experience that we can perhaps hold on to and see how we can perhaps adapt as part of the second pillar of what Liz was speaking about?
Thank you very much for that question, Yvonne. It's definitely coming out of the Irma experience. It demonstrated the need for the local community's response capacity. That was one of the things that, you know, there needs to be a certain level that resides within the community, that they're able to do something when something happens. Mm-hmm. As the minister indicated, they are the true first responders because they're there when something happens. And they have to do something for themselves until the national systems can cycle up and get there. It also needs a level of flexibility when it comes to recovery. You're not recovering in the same way as persons were traditionally planning several decades ago. It's a new environment. So the vulnerability of the livelihoods that you're dealing with now, there's a need for retooling of populations, addressing what are the development trends they're going to have to be dealing with. How strong now are the supporting network threads, the programs that we have to help knit the community back together? In other words, what are the mechanisms that we have in place, for example, from the public sector that supports your community development, that supports your gender issues, that supports your vulnerable persons issues, disability, early childhood, the elderly, in terms of livelihoods, the formal and informal sectors, healthcare, etc. How strong or adaptable are those agencies? And are they well positioned to deal with putting back together the piece of the communities when you don't have all the resources that you are expected to have? You don't have the personnel, you don't have the time. So that's an issue that you have to deal with. And what you realize is that your community knowledge gap and the collective responsibility, it's inversely proportional to the community's capability to respond, develop, and adapt. And that's a relationship that you have. And if there's an inability to link what we can call social or tunnel vision risk practices with what we are seeing as the impact, then it means that there are going to be systemic issues you're dealing with. We talk about littering all the time, and you have to go into communities to remind them, and are they tying that littering to the exacerbated flood conditions that they're experiencing? Because all of that litter has to go somewhere. The wind, the water, to take it somewhere. Somewhere it's out of sight. Somewhere it's blocking drains. It's blocking culverts. It's causing areas to flood that traditionally weren't doing that. We're all looking at everyday practices. Sometimes you're clearing a piece of land and someone needs to get a heavy-duty machinery onto their land. So what they're going to do, they're going to pour dirt or something, or put rocks and so on, so that machinery can drive over that ditch, drive over that drain to go and deal with whatever. But then after they're done, what do? They leave that blockage there. So what happens now? The community that never experienced flooding before all of a sudden has issues popping out of nowhere. So that planning and projects, we can do them from now till the cows come home. They're going to remain ineffectual without sustained implementation and order and community structure. So we love order. We don't necessarily love to be orderly. So doing the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing, it can only get you so far, but it's not going to provide economic stability, and therefore the transitioning of skills that persons have into new and existing markets is going to be critical, and that is where now we have to now talk and have development talks with our private sector, with our businesses, because what are the functions we are going to need to help protect us in the future, and how do the existing businesses services deal with that? What are the capabilities they have? How can they develop new careers for persons to get into that to better serve the community they're dealing with?
Thank you so very much, Sherrod. So I'm going to do things a little differently. Doriel, you finished your homework. Finish your homework? All right, so we are going to take your homework now. And as we are taking Doriel's homework, because she's going to be a spokesperson for some of the DEOs, I want all of the panelists to think about this question. And I want you to think about it within your sphere, so the sector, or the area of responsibility. So we often talk about shared responsibility, and we've heard that term, I want to say at least 15 times so far for the time we have been here. So when we think about shared responsibility, each panelist, I'm going to come to you. What does that look like in practice? Because what we want to do is that we don't just want to talk about things. We want to give practical ways for persons to be able to move and change. All right, so what does that look like to you? But we're going to take the homework because we want to ensure, because we're talking about community resilience, so we can't talk about community resilience without talking about those ones who are the boots on the ground supporting the national system. So Doriel, what's your homework? We have a mic that she can get. Thank you so very much.
Good morning, everyone. I am Doriel Gill. I am the chairperson of the St. Michael Northwest District Emergency Organization. I am not only going to do this homework by myself,
okay,
because I am just one voice, so I want to include other voices. Shifting from restoring disaster recovery to a more proactive system, because we don't want to build back the same way. And we have never built back the same way. Empowering the local community through engagement and how to respond to the risk in their own areas, how to find ways to rebuild stronger by ways of discussion with the stakeholders in their communities to assist them in rebuilding. Over the years, we have been trying, and the area that is most dear to my heart, we've been working with them for the longest time, well, over 3 years, and that is at Pile Bay, where they, it's called a little fishing village, and for them to rebuild, they cannot rebuild on their own, and so we get in there and we try. We speak to the commercial buildings, the commercial properties around them, and trying to help them to bounce back should there be a disaster in that area. So that is part of the homework. I am going to share the rest of it with two others at the table.
All right, so hold it. We'll come back. We're going to come back to you. So let the others at the table hold their part of the homework, and we're going to come back, because I want to get some of the panelists. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Greenwich. And the question is, you know, we talk about shared responsibility, but what does that look like in practice for you as the governor of the central bank? What does that mean?
Thank you very much. Well, of course, as governor of the central bank, we lead the financial sector and head of the financial sector. And so what will that look like from our perspective? A number of areas, but for us, it's really about making financial resilience but financially viable and financially visible. So we are the central bank, and central bank across the world. What we do in this space is to ensure that the climate and disaster risks that exist are better reflected in the supervision of the banking system, but also in financial stability analysis and the operational resilience that we expect from the financial sector. And we are focused to help convert that into practical products that will benefit the various sectors. For example, appropriate price insurance, resilience-linked lending, whereas the more resilient a sector or persons in a certain area is, the more and the lending is linked to that. It also would mean like more flexible credit for small businesses and incentives for borrowers to strengthen their own properties and their operations so they can get more finance and borrowing. So we have a role in encouraging financial institutions to develop such products. We also have what I said, a convenient role. We can bring the various players together, government, financial institutions, insurance, development partners, and communities around common data and common in terms of shocks, etc., and practical solutions. We also have a role to play not only locally but convening such internationally. I'll mention one. We are advancing on the international level a facility called a Lifeline. I happen to be the chair for the V20 CBS central bank groups, and what we have developed is an innovative products for vulnerable countries in the world, small vulnerable countries. And this product provides liquidity in immediate shock within 2 weeks. I chaired that meeting in Barbados last week with governments from around the world. And when that come online, that will add to the layer of financing products that we have been developing to ensure that if a natural disaster or when something happens, that we can get liquidity to those affected as much as it is needed. We also have a responsibility as central bankers to provide, to ensure that the systems are working in such a way that we build resilience, not only economically, but financially. And you will know that last week we launched a new instant payment system called BIMPay. But one of the advantages of that, and one of the reasons for that, was to build financial resilience. In the event that there's a natural disaster, that once we have everything working and we are fully on board the government, imagine a natural disaster hits Barbados. And once funding is available, so for example, when Hurricane Barra hit Grenada, funds were put out within 14 days. But it took the Grenadian authorities months to get the money to the affected areas because they don't have a national payment system like what we've just developed. Imagine in Barbados, every Barbadian having a wallet and the national insurance or your group or any emergency group can immediately push funds to persons in the disaster areas that can go and get the materials and start rebuilding immediately, quickly, even if the entire financial system is wiped out. Physically, all the banks gone, everything wiped out. You can push. So once funds is available, we build that layer of resilience, and that's the job of central banks in order to ensure that a farmer in St. Lucie can immediately have funds in his wallet the next day once it's available, and he can go and get materials and get his product up and get going. So that's kind of the space we operate in, and that's kind of the role of central banks.
Oh, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we are going to go to you, Dr. Holder. What does that look like for you, shared responsibility?
Okay, thanks again. We began with the research because we wanted to have quantitative and qualitative information on really what is happening with the sector and what the solutions ought to be then coming out of that sector, out of that research. We looked at the impact of Beryl. I think it was ECLAT that projected some $193 million in damages, about 0.15% of GDP. And when we, looked at that data, we recognized, I think that's preliminary. We recognized that had we worked together with the fishing sector, a lot more we could have maybe minimized that. And so there may be 2 or 3 key programs that we are working on. One, the sector needs to build those continuity plans. And therefore training and education is critical because the research continues to show that persons don't even think that they need that they need to have those plans. They don't see a reason to put those plans in place. Imagine that's some of the feedback that we got. So that tells me that there's still an issue of education. I think the featured speaker earlier mentioned the hurricane in the Bahamas and the fact that evacuation orders were issued. But people still felt, I ain't so sure, I need to leave my home because of whatever reason, and I can't point anything else. But whatever reason, that tells me something about education. People still don't think that they need to be prepared. So for us, education and training is paramount. Obviously, business support organizations are there to lobby as well. So we have to continue our lobbying efforts to ensure that we can bring affordable insurance to the sector. That is an issue. When we look at the fishing sector in particular, there's no one there really that had insurance for their business. I know that you have an insurance provider here as a sponsor today, but when we talk to the insurance firms, unfortunately, we're not getting the kind of feedback that we want relative to the affordability of insurance products. So it may mean looking at some sort of group projects and group products that you can bring to the sector that makes it more affordable and therefore more and easily accessible to firms. That is key. And it may very well mean as well, from a policy perspective, that we work with government to mandate certain behaviors. You know, there are times that you have to use the policy whip to get persons in line and to encourage the kind of behaviors that you need to see so that you can have protection for the whole. And therefore, the policy instruments may need to be revisited, that we can ensure that certain buildings, can you imagine, certain buildings are not adequately insured, where MSMEs are renting from landlords. So that is an issue that we may need to consider from an advocacy perspective. So there are a number of areas, in my view, training, education, capacity building, and policy, introducing policy frameworks that can protect the sector. And sometimes you have to protect people from themselves, you know? So I think those are the key areas that we may need to consider in this overall collaborative effort to help protect the small business community.
Thank you so very much. And I think that piece about mandating certain actions, and I know in the British Virgin Islands, one of the things that they have done as part of their registration process for anybody that's a contractor, they have to have demonstrated that they've taken the safer building training. So maybe here in Barbados, we may want to ensure that as part of some process, that we have the continuity of operations mandated as part of you know, as a policy perspective. So I'm going to go over to you, Michael. Shared responsibility. What is that? I know you started out about being your brother's keeper, but break that down a little bit for us in terms of what that shared responsibility looks like.
I start regionally. I'm looking at CARICOM along with probably SEDIMA. Assist with having seed banks where you can have, in terms of a disaster, be it a weather phenomena or pests, to look at being able to assist that impacted country with local seeds, local plants that they can actually get back up much more quickly. I'm looking at that. I'm looking at the ability to form co-ops. This is now within Barbados, so that you can purchase some of the new technologies at a cheaper price. I think sometimes farmers want to go one by themselves instead of getting together, and it's easier then that you might get a better price if you're purchasing in bulk. That's another one. Recognizing the importance of your local varieties, that is important. And the DOs have a hand in playing with this, recognizing who's around you, who are the farmers in your area. And if you see something strange, say something. I'm not the police, this is not the Barbados Police Force. But people see things and they say, don't worry about that. That could be just anything. But that, you not saying anything, could result in further damage. So seeing something different, say something. Now, and I end with this, stop trying to sneak in things. You know, people like you say, oh, the system, you know, we get this in, you know, and this goes for right through the Caribbean. What affects Barbados now could affect St. Lucia, St. Vincent, because people travel. So before you take in anything or you take something with you, ensure that it's either clean or you have the permission of the regulatory authority.
Thank you. So we are going to take some questions. So gear up your questions. We are going to come to you so you can interact with the panel. So I'm going to come to Elizabeth, then I'm going to go to Sherrod, and then I'm going to round out with Nick, with your what the share responsibility look like, and then I'm going to come to take some questions from you. You have been waiting a while. So Liz, Sherrod, and Nick. The shared responsibility, what does that look for you? You want to unpack it. What does that really mean? Is it just a buzzword? What does it mean?
Okay, I think it's
go
a shared
ahead.
responsibility of government and governance structures around communities. It's a shared responsibility with the ministries that operate within government that serve communities, whether it be fishing communities, agricultural communities. I think it's also a shared responsibility at a strategic level to have the stronger frameworks in place so that a lot of those things can operate coherently. It's a shared responsibility of groups and civil society groups and the private sector operating at the national and at the local level, and of course a shared responsibility of us as individuals. I mean, it's broad and a bit self-explanatory, but I think that is important. But I would have added, and probably a little later, depending upon your questions, some of the ideas that I think we should have in place to ensure that we have a coherent mechanism for ensuring that we have that shared responsibility translated itself into action.
What does that mean for you?
In one word, love.
Break it down.
Right?
Break it down.
Well, love is caring about something. Define love. Love is a feeling you feel when you feel a feeling you haven't felt before.
Okay, Sherrod.
And
Okay.
to anyone who believes that it's a choice, it's not a choice. A choice is a one sarcastic moment. It's a commitment to a level of choices to continue to make that choice. And as we know with love, there's no romance without finance. So when it comes to that DRM budgeting, the financing, the funding, the resourcing, it's an investment and not an expense. That return on investment is dependent on our willingness to undergo sustained implementation in accordance with whatever guidance and best practice. And it avoids as much as possible abandoning that identified path for short-term expediency or mild discomforts. So when we talk about investing in people, investing in the social aspects of it, investing in the culture, investing in the tech development, the physical investment, investment in the legislative aspect for institutionalizing. So let us dare to develop the new norm because we have the experience of COVID. We resisted that until it forced us to get to a particular point. So we can look at it as a player. You want instant steroid muscles and then have to deal with health later on? Or do you want to go through that gym pain that gives you long-lasting gains? That choice that you take is influenced by determining the quality of life that you are willing to tolerate.
Okay, thank you, Nick. And then we'll come to the audience if you have some questions. I see Richardo, but and I see Jennifer. Go ahead, Nick.
So in terms of shared responsibility, I think I would have started speaking about coordination. So SEDEMA is the World Food Programme's main partner. I joined in 2019 after Maria and Irma, but I think watching Dorian, watching the Barrow, Hurricane Melissa responses, I have seen the growth in terms of the partnership with SEDEMA and the ability to respond and support countries in responding as well. I think a lot of this has to do with, we have an MOU in place that also speaks to how we can collaborate to strengthen these national systems as well. And it's having those discussions not just during a disaster, but also building the capacity year-round, both in SEDEMA, both with also national disaster management agencies that supports the resilience building in these countries. So that's one. Shared responsibility is also recognizing, as I mentioned, that you can't do it alone, right? WFP at the moment, we're small, we're growing, but we don't have, especially in countries like Barbados, a lot of feet on the ground. So even with Hurricane Barrow, we would have partnered with the Barbados Red Cross, for example, to deliver cash assistance to fisheries, fisher folk who were impacted, right? But it's recognizing our capacity as well and the capacity of the Red Cross, who have, again, that outreach program that they can, again, assist those persons that need support. And it's our responsibility, I think at WFP, not only in terms of food security, logistics and supply chain, but also vulnerability analysis mapping, but disaster financing. I think we need to find a way to not only what I call identify the money in, so looking at the different financial instruments that can be identified to release funding quickly before and after. And some of the instruments within the Caribbean need to be, the policy needs to be amended to allow for funds to be released before a disaster. But not only the instruments, but more importantly, the systems and the money out. So how can you also have agreements in place with cooperating partners on the ground that could be turnkey, that as soon as the disaster hits as well, that you can rely on them to deliver, whether it's food, in-kind assistance, or cash, to those who need it in a timely manner.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to go to the questions that we have on the floor. I'm seeing CDB, I lost on Jennifer, okay, and right, okay, so we have 3. So when you are speaking, if you can give your name, the entity you represent, and a succinct question. And if it's going to go to a specific panelist, or I can decide. So go ahead.
All right, thank you so much. Good
afternoon.
Afternoon, everyone. Richard Aiken, the Caribbean Development Bank. Just one question. I was quite impressed with Lizzie's presentation earlier around deepening our conversation around behavior modification, etc. But I'm wondering, are we doing enough to allow civil society, community-based organizations to thrive? When you look at access to resources, when you look at their ability to get registered in some countries, it takes forever to get that done. To get a bank account can also be a struggle for some of these sectors. So I'm wondering, are we doing enough for these community-driven organizations to do all that needs to be done, or even some of what needs to be done? And if yes or no, you could tell me, what are some of the 1 or 2 things that we could look at in the near future. But I think creating a thriving environment for these organizations, in my mind, is very critical.
Thank you, Richardo. I'm going to answer the question, and then I'm going to pass it on to Sherrod as he speaks, as he sits in that national space, And I'm going to say, very frankly, no, we're not. And that's one of the things that we have to do. We have to recognize where there are areas where we have to improve. I'm not saying that nothing is being done, but those things that you have just listed, those are stumbling blocks, because we recognize that the community groups can do the work, but they may not have the structure that the purse holder requires. So, and I think, I don't remember who was talking about, perhaps Michael, that whole piece about working together collaboratively, not only around doing the work, but demonstrating that you have the systems in place to be able to do it. So that's the way that I would answer it, we've worked, and so that's the area we can say definitively no. But Sharad, is enough being done? And if not, what can be done?
Okay, thank you so much, Yvonne, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. When we look at civil society and how have we been servicing them, we've fallen short. And I think that's been the cry that I've heard through many states. Looking at the civil society, when we talk about their organizational structure, how well have we been working with them to help develop those skills and sustain them? Their project management, their MER capabilities, etc. Because we say, okay, you have access to all of these funding agencies and everything, but the basic requirements for you to function as an organization, to develop your project initiatives, to sustain your project initiatives, to manage them, to report on them, we are not seeing the requisite support for them to help develop that. Some of them, they coalesce around a particular initiative, a problem in their community, etc. and so on, and there's that initial drive, etc. and so on. But are we capitalizing on that and bringing in the people that are now enthused, are now involved, are now participating in something, and recognizing where their skills are, what support they need to develop it, and then to become full functioning parts of that whole community mechanism? I don't think we've been doing that, and that's why I said we have to now look back at what are the strengths of the threads that exist and knit the community together. The strength of those social programs, the strength of those welfare programs, the strength of programs, not just in the response phase, but in identifying what the needs are. Because have we given them the opportunity to lead? Have we truly listened to them, engaged them, etc. and so on? Have we seen that these projects are being community birthed, driven, led, managed, and sustained
by the community members, because if it's an initiative coming from outside, yes, there may be some support, but it only goes so far, and our limited public sector can only take it so far because we're pulled in many directions, and hopefully we're trying to remain in one piece.
All right, thanks so much. I'll take the question here, and then there was another one. Oh, right here. So if you can take Jennifer, and then we'll come here.
First, I would...
Name, entity.
Sorry. Jennifer Ennis, in the Ministry of Labor. I'm going to put my question maybe to Mr. James.
Okay.
Here.
Which one?
Sorry, Michael James. Here during COVID, one of the methods that I think was put in place was to plow a lot of the lands. We're talking about food security. And I realized that a lot of lands all across the country were plowed, but nothing was planted. The question is, why can't we use the resources that are within our hands, first of all? Then I'm going to say a number of things, make it quick. We talk about burial and stuff. I have not yet gotten past Thomas. I remember being in Massey and Warrens, and somebody said, do you know that there's a storm about to hit us? There was little information on it. There are a lot of houses that are still without roofs, still unlivable. Where is the Ministry of Housing in all of this? I think the time has come that the Ministry of Housing or the government of Barbados has to set aside some houses for some sort of provision for the DEM, that you're not always caught with your pants down, scrambling, looking for housing and such like. God forbid that Venezuela happened to us. We cannot bear up under it. God forbid that Melissa in Jamaica happened to us. We cannot bear up under it. But therefore, there are things within our hands, within our capacity that we can use. I think we need to start looking at those things that all of us here today can ask the question, what is it that I have that I can bring to the table? What is it that I have that I can offer assistance? We too often look at government to provide all the solutions when often the solutions are just within our own reach. Then you can look at, well, we have the different organizations, DEM and DEO within the community. A lot of the resolutions are within the community members. Why can't we also look at a group within within the community that would also be part of the first response? Because oftentimes we as community members have to take action without waiting for the government or whoever has been designed to take action, because it is us that is at stake. Therefore, there are things that we can look at. The conversation has to be at the community level as well, not just at the government level, and we will see a lot more proactiveness.
Thank you. Quite a lot to unpack in that, Jennifer. And I think persons may be wondering if she was part of the planning committee, because you're hearing quite a lot of those pieces coming up, quite a lot of questions that we want to unpack. But what I'll take away from that intervention really is that you have to start with yourself. Yeah, it has to be what you can do as an individual, and collectively, every person who is part of a community. So if you have identified what you can do, then you put it together with your neighbor, and you put it together with your next neighbor, then you're able to really build out a community resilience program. I don't know, Michael, if you're able to answer the question very quickly in terms of, we plow, but we didn't plant.
Yeah, truthfully, yes. Some of this was done. You must remember that a lot of the lands are in the private sector hands. So
yes.
That sometimes is an issue. But what we've done, we've gone in now to a crop escalation program within the ministry. So it's not just planting, is what you do afterwards, because you can't just plant and increase the level of crops without the add-on, so the whole development of value added. I think that is something we also have to look at in this whole issue. Some of the yams or the sweet potatoes, do we put it as sweet potato chips? Do we keep them as flakes? So that indeed, if there's something that happens, you can utilize some of those products that's not necessarily fresh phase, but in that value added phase.
Yeah.
And it comes back to community again. Once before, you used to have these little small groups that did small jams and jellies and so forth. Maybe there's the need for that to come back in phase where you can utilize the products that you produce in your ground. It don't have to be a large field in your backyard. Get together and do throughout the time.
Yes.
Throughout the marjoram. I mean, things like that. Get back into those type of areas that can assist just in case something happens.
Thank you so much. So we'll take this question over here. Any other questions? I have room for, okay. I see at the, I can't recognize who the person that we have there, and then we round you off with you, David, but we'll take your question.
Good afternoon. Excuse me for not standing.
No, that's quite okay.
I'm 2 feet short, so I hope you can see me. My name is Antoinette Chandler. I'm representing the Barbados Council for the Disabled, as well as my own organization, the Rehabilitating and Enabling Society for Amputees. In my community, not where I live, but the disabled community, we have the saying, nothing for us without us. But, however, I'm going to extend on that, nothing for the country that include us without us. And I heard all morning about the researches, the insurances, all the different little things put together. But I have not heard anything mentioned about the disabled community. The Small Business Association had their research and had their data, but they don't include the disabled community. Because I know they have a good few small businesses that are run by disabled persons. And my question is, what are the data collected? How many things do you have involving the disabled community? Food crops, persons do have a little land next to the house that they're doing certain things, as well as Michael said, the jams and the jellies, but the disabled. But how many things include the disabled right now that this panel is involving? How many data collections do you have that include us with your all decisions?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think one of the things I'm gonna start with you first, Doc. But one of the things that we have taken on board as part of the comprehensive disaster management, when we look at all people, we look at all people regardless. Yeah, and so sometimes you may not see explicitly, and that may be one of the areas that we need to address. So you are very much involved in all of that. But I'm also going to ask Kerry, Ms. Hines, if you can just speak a little bit about your commitment to ensuring that the vulnerable populations, including persons with disabilities, are addressed. So I'll take SBA, and then I'm going to take from you, Ms. Hines, in terms of your overarching approach to how you treat with persons with disabilities. Doc?
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks for the question. I'll leave the issue of the preparedness relative to disaster management and so on to Kerry, but to my colleague. The Barbados Council of the Disabled, as you know, is a member of the SBA, a group member. And from the SBA's perspective, we have programs with the Ministry of Labor in particular that are geared towards the disabled community. As you know, there was, through the Ministry of Labor some time ago, a policy initiative to encourage the private sector to recruit persons from the disabled community, a percentage of the staff from the disabled community. We are a strong advocate of that and a partner in that. where businesses are being encouraged to do so. And the Ministry of Labor has even gone a step further, where they've set aside funding for those firms who actually recruit persons from the disabled community, not only to pay stipends and so on, but more importantly to retrofit their businesses to be able to cater to persons from the disabled community. I mean, if you have an individual that is challenged, let's say with his sight, you want to have the right equipment in place that you can cater to those individuals, the persons who are unable, to take stairs clearly, as indicated here. You want to have the ramp in place in your establishment that you can cater for those individuals using wheelchairs and so on. So that is a specific project spearheaded by the Ministry of Labor that the association is a partner in. And we encourage, if there are any private sector entities in here, to join in such an effort, because, I mean, at the end of the day, we're speaking about being inclusive, and we want to make sure that we provide those spaces for individuals from the community to play an active role in our workplaces, and knowing that funding is there for you to assist you in retrofitting your businesses to cater to the community. So to your point directly, we did, yes, in our research, look at those kind of areas, but I mean, today we were talking about disaster preparedness, and so we went specifically to those points. But we have inclusive programs for persons from the disabled community.
I see a smile.
I'll defer to Carrie on the other issue.
All right, so Ms. Hines?
Thanks very much. I've been enjoying the discussion thus far, and as you all know, the comprehensive disaster management involves all of us. And the disabled community is a part, one of the vested stakeholders as it relates to the National Disaster Management System. And within that, I think your presence here today signals that very important partnership and collaboration. We have made a deliberate effort to engage, to actively engage the community in not just forums like these, talk shops, but in terms of sitting on our various committees, being a part of our governance mechanism, because in order for you to get what your perspectives heard, you have to be a part of the conversation. You have to be at the table. And we have made a deliberate effort to ensure that the disabled community and a number of other representatives of various vulnerable groups are a part of the committees of the National Disaster Management System. When we are devising our policies, I cast my mind back to the National Comprehensive Disaster Management Policy and the early warning, multi-hazard early warning policy. The disabled community was at the table. And I also cast my mind back to years ago when we were flogged by the community for not taking into consideration some of the needs from a portion of their community. And we responded with practical programs. For example, our emergency services, we had pulled together training for our emergency services. Because if we're going to be responding to someone, we need to understand the community that we're responding to. And we have had a program where the emergency services, for example, are trained in sign language, in disabilities training, so they understand the issues that you have to deal with as a member of the disabled community, so we are in a better position to serve you.
Yes.
The question of, and I think the feature speakers spoke to it this morning and a number of other speakers, listening to persons and not listening then to just offer a response, but actively listening and incorporating some of the solutions in our policies and in our actions. It is a work in progress, and it is nothing that will happen overnight. But we will continue to ensure that you are represented in our space. Quite often, the solutions lie within the various, everyone in this room knows what they're supposed to do. But there must be that willingness, that deliberateness to actually do what you're supposed to do.
Thank you.
You see the PSAs, and we've been running them in between the various. You're part of that. The issues that you bring to the table, they are reflected, and we are actively working to deal with it with you, not for you, but with you. And you will find that the Department of Emergency Management and a number of agencies here in the room, the DEOs, we are there to serve you and to serve alongside you to ensure that this community resilience that we're talking about, it actually manifests itself in a successful model, not only here in Barbados, but one across the region. So you always know that you are a part of this family.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Hines. So we have two final questions that we're going to take. So David, gear your question in a succinct way, because I'm getting a signal regarding lunch. And then I can see the face, but I'm not sure if I'm familiar. So if you can introduce yourself, your name and the entity that you represent, along with your succinct question.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ryan Clark, Vice Chair, St. Philip South. DEO, sorry.
I didn't see the blue shirt, so sorry, I didn't. Okay.
One question is, are we doing enough as it relates to food security? Heard Mr. James speak about possible seed banks. Is there one set up, both national and regional? The ability to supply after a hurricane. Have you looked at community farming projects? Sagicor is here. Is there any plans for insurance as it relates to the DO members on the ground? And the last thing, pesticide and pesticide runoff as it relates to the water and the water table.
All right, so that's quite a bit. David, is your question going to be around agriculture as well too, so we can throw all to the deputy? Oh, okay, so all right, not a problem. All right, so Michael, enough for food security? Do we have enough banks, local and regional? Sagicar's paraphernalia is here, but I don't see the bodies, so we'll probably have to skip that question. And I don't see Kerry in the room. So we're going to, is it okay if we treat with the one with food security? Because the other entities, I don't see them fully in the room. So, Michael?
Okay, good question, my brother. There's not enough? No, there are not enough. We are at the facility that we put in St. Philip, at the Home Agricultural Station. There would be a seed bank incorporated into that. But we also, through the tissue culture, we will be tissue culturing a number of different plants, sweet potato, yams, bananas that we can share. At the regional level, at CARICOM level, I've just been sent some communication where they're trying to do that at the regional level, where different countries are being asked to provide or to state what are their main crops and how are they looking to store them. So it might be a case where Barbados may be asked, or Jamaica or Trinidad, whichever has the facility, to assist with the storage of some of these crops, so that in the event of any disaster, they can get up much more quickly. That is very much so when you're talking about tissue culture material. As I said, they're cleaner, and they would have been tested. All right. In terms of the runoff, that has always been an issue. In terms of persons using pesticides, I should say abusing pesticides, because in the Caribbean we got this thing. If 1 teaspoonful is good, 3 teaspoonful is better. However, what we are looking at is to look at ensuring that we have an integrated pest management approach. So we actually spoke to one of our development partners, Cabby, just yesterday, and we're looking to see if we can use more biological control agents to perform that particular role. But remember, all may not be able to be used. We're also looking at what pesticides. So we're not just looking at a pesticide that can kill everything. We're targeted pesticides. So if you're looking at controlling a particular, let's say, insect pest, is targeted for that. It's for that dipter, which is a fly. If you're looking for a mealybug, it's targeted for that, as opposed to using it as a broad spectrum. So those sort of things we're looking at. Under the CARE project, and you mentioned within the thing, there's a program under the Ministry of Agriculture, but it's being run by DEM, where we are allowing persons in the community. We're going to set up demonstration farms. This was enunciated by the minister a couple of weeks ago. That they're going to be looking at that in a more formative way, where you're going to be encouraged to grow more at the community level and assist one another in these things. So, as my friend, the other James said, everything, you take steps and you build on it. It's not anything that's going to happen straight off, but things have been started, and it's just to keep them rolling.
Thank you.
That is what we have to do.
I know, Nick, I know you really want to come in, because I know the piece about, that, but I want to take the other question from David, and I don't know, I'm going to crave the indulgence. I'm getting some hard stops. I don't know if we can take another 5 minutes, or the conference coordinator or the director, but I'm going to take your question, David, so introduce yourself, entity you represent, and then I'm going to then come to you, Nick.
Yes, just a short question. My name is David Alcott. I'm from the Ministry of Agriculture as well. My question was for Dr. Holt. I was very interested in your project on MSMEs. And like my colleague, Ms. Chandler, pulled out a subsection with the disabled. I'm wondering, what did you find when you looked at resilience among farms and farmers? Because we don't think sometimes that farms and fishing, that these are businesses, but they are. So I'm just wondering, you said 8% of your MSMEs did have business continuity plans. So what did you find in terms, if you did look at agriculture alone, what did you find out about farmers and businesses, including farmers?
Go ahead, yeah. No, that question is to you.
I know the question is to me, but I thought that...
No, I'm going to come to Nick after that question.
Which will give me the opportunity to go into
okay, all right.
At the agriculture section.
All right, no problem. So Nick, you want to go ahead with your piece, and then we'll come back to that.
No, I'll just be really quick. So one, just a touch in terms of the work we have doing with persons with disabilities. So a lot of times when we develop our cash assistance programs or even in-kind programs, we have to find a way to work with the social protection ministries to make sure that's inclusive. So within the design, you have to think about distribution points and how persons will be able to, again, access them, right? So not only for persons with disabilities, but even in some cases, the food kits that are produced are fairly heavy. So how can even the elderly be able to carry some of these things? And these are just some of the things we need to think about. So we do post-distribution monitoring as well. So before we plan, I sit with the social protection ministry to see how it's inclusive, but we also do post-distribution monitoring to ensure that, again, the programs actually function as they should, and that everybody was able to receive the assistance in a timely and efficient manner. And last but not least, to the question in the back with regards to storage, for food security and trade. Just to flag to keep your eyes on the CARICOM 25 by 30 initiative, right? Because that speaks to a lot of work that's being done regionally, but also has impacts on the countries as well in terms of cold storage, climate smart agriculture, but more importantly, how we can foster interregional trade, based especially on what we're seeing geopolitically, but looking at different markets that can be accessed now and how trade can be better facilitated across the region between countries.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. Doc?
Yes, thanks again. I'm going to give you the website again in case you didn't write it down, right? www.sba.bb. And this study did focus on agriculture because agriculture is a key pillar, believe it or not, within our economy. I'm not so sure what specifically you want to know about agriculture, so I'm going to ask you to download it that you can read the points there posted by the researcher. This 2026 report, interestingly enough, compared baseline data that we collected in 2016. Right? It's been a long time. Admittedly, it's not going to be that long for the next one. We're going to do it biennially going forward. But we compared some 2016 data to this 2026, and believe it or not, we saw a significant decline, a significant shift in the data for agriculture in terms of the number of firms operating in the sector, the level of employment in the sector. Yes, we have a lot of women, interestingly enough, in the agricultural sector, compared to other areas such as industry, construction, and so on. As you can appreciate, those sectors are more male-dominated. But there has been a decline recorded in, yes, the contribution to GDP, the contribution to employment, the actual number of firms operating in that sector. But it is still an important sector, we think, to the economy. There's some policy recommendations in the data for government to look at, and obviously stakeholders. There's more that needs to be done to build capacity in the agriculture sector. So despite the success that we saw with COVID, because we looked at the 5-year period coming out of COVID, the success we saw with COVID in terms of being able to diversify, being able to look to the agricultural sector, because the economies across the globe were practically on a go slow, yet we have not seen that there's been a strategic effort to build out the agricultural sector, despite the fact that the agricultural sector saved us during COVID. Now, isn't that an oxymoron if there was ever one? The agricultural sector saved us during COVID. COVID is now, behind us, we're recovering, and yet you would think that there would be a strategic response to developing the agriculture sector. In our view, there's none.
Yeah.
Yes?
Okay. Thank you so very much.
So the knee-jerk reaction, it would appear, forgive me for this 30 seconds more. I usually listen to Brass Stats Agriculture on Sundays, and I always smile whenever I hear the moderator talk. You can tell that he takes this thing to heart, right? But I smile, he makes the point always that the owners of the land, in his view, the private sector, the owners of the land, are not doing anything with it because they see a quick buck with maybe housing projects. So they keep the land idle, not doing anything with it, and then they go and make the argument, well, we need to have a change of use because there's nothing happening with this and so on, because housing projects are maybe a bit more lucrative.
Short term.
So from where I sit, this decline that the data showed ought not to be a surprise to anyone, because personally speaking, this is Leonard Holder's view now, not necessarily the SBA, we do not have a strategic plan for the development of agriculture in Barbados. And until we do have one, we're not going to see the kind of growth that we believe can be had for agriculture in Barbados. And that is the problem. There's no strategic intent behind it. We get a lot of fancy talk and pontification by our government, but there's clearly no seriousness behind the development of agriculture in Barbados. I'm sorry for going off there.
So we've gotten the passion, and we want that passion to be translated. So we're wrapping up now. I'm getting the looks, and I'm also getting the phone messages. I wish I could, but I can't. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give each panelist, I'm not sure if we still have our Dr. Greenwich online, but, and I'm going to crave your indulgence, So listen to the question carefully. In 30 seconds, so that's the main part. If you don't hear anything else, this is the main part. In 30 seconds, what is one thing you want to leave with this gathering? And in order to give you a time to, because I know you have a lot in your head, but to put it within that 30-second time frame, I'm going to go back to the table, because I know you spent some time, so I want you in 30 seconds to give me the second piece of the homework at the table. Doriel, who was going to give the other piece? If not, we're going to, who's the person? Just go ahead and share your intervention. 30 seconds, Are you hearing? Is it on?
Thank you very much.
Yes, beautiful.
Yes, the other point has Houston Peters, chairperson of St. Michael West Central, DEO. We're looking at the enabling or encouraging multi-stakeholders in public-private partnerships. As you're aware, no single entity can carry the burden of disaster risk on its own. And one way of bringing all these entities together will be technology. And this is where now the telecom companies can liaise with the same entities that I spoke about and contribute towards advanced technology. We can look at AI, as you know, that's the most popular thing coming now, and advanced logistics. And these things can be used to help model and predict hazards. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Is Dr. Greenwich still with us? He's still online? Yeah? No? Is he? No, he's no longer? All right, no problem. All right, so we'll end just like how we started. So we're going to go from Nick and come right down the table in 30 seconds. What is one thing you want this gathering to know and to walk away with?
So I'll focus on one area of our work. That would be the same adaptive social protection or shock responsive social protection. So for me, it would be making these systems more shock responsive. So that involves having prearranged financing, having triggers and thresholds in place to release the financing, digitalizing certain elements as well of the system. So your registration processes, your assessments, development of management information systems, and automated protocols. So protocols which also, as would be mentioned, linking it back to early warning systems, allowing informed decisions to be made even based on forecasts, that we could again have these measures in place ahead of the impact of an event that can allow for, again, reduce the impact after, but increase resilience as well.
Thank you. Nick, Michael?
Quickly, our resilience strategy must explicitly include pest and disease risk management as a core pillar alongside of the climate smart water and soil measures with respect to disasters. And to answer Dr. Holder, yes, there's a strategy, but the point is it takes two hands to clap.
Beautiful. Sharad, 30 seconds. Let's prove it.
The issues of community resilience, they need to be brought down to the level of bread and butter questions and conversations that are happening around individual dinner tables. Why should I care? How does it harm me? How does my participation lead to my pay? So from tourism landscapers to green space management, water sports staff to community lifeguards, eco tour guides to reserve area wardens. Addressing community and country needs must be twinned with potential sustainable initiatives, careers and sustainable livelihoods. Examples exist. We can't legislate morality, but failing to address selfish or unreasonable and inane practices ends up delivering us to the same destination. So.
All right, thank you, Sharad. Liz?
Sorry, mine might be a little longer than 30 seconds.
No, okay, it got to be 30 seconds, because you see them already standing out here with the bags.
I know. I think really, and I think I mentioned it throughout, I would say an investment in a national recovery framework, which should be something that would create a clear, coherent mechanism to address the management of recovery. Because everything everyone has said is important, but how does it become part of what government does? What is the framework within which it happens? That should include the legal framework, institutional framework, what agencies, it's a whole of government approach, including the private sector as well as CSOs and the community. How do we integrate it? What is the legal environment for recovery in which we can include that? And who is the lead agency that would ensure a lot of those things strategically are done, but are also done at the community level? An important one, a lot of it was mentioned, what are the key plans that we need to have in place to ensure resilient recovery? We heard a lot of mention about continuity of business plans, but there's also continuity of government. Important also debris removal, which is a very important aspect of disasters and how we integrate that with cash for work, something UNDP has pioneered over many years. But an important one, we haven't heard it, but it impacts everyone, which is how we plan for housing resettlement, because when communities are impacted, where we live is also greatly impacted.
All right.
I wanted
so
to touch just one more.
I am here also.
Yes, we're going to come to you, Doc.
Yeah, just one more. A lot of, we had a lot of discussion on financing, and I know we have a lot of our traditional catastrophe insurance, contingency financing, blue-green bonds, and a lot of the things that have been mentioned. But I think within our government system, we need to have recovery responsive budgeting in all of our sectors so that we can take care of communities even when we have minor disasters. A very important.
No, we have to wrap it up. So let's hear from Dr. Holder.
Thanks much. I think with the intensity of the disasters and the frequency and all that, the shifting even in the timelines, we have to move away from just talking about what needs to be done and being a lot more aggressive about getting it done. So it's no longer just talking it, it is walking it, it is doing it. So we have to become a lot more action-oriented as a people, in my view.
Thank you. And then we are going to wrap up. That's one with Dr. Greenwich. So in 30 seconds, what's one thing you want the persons in the room to know?
The one thing is that I would say is that resilience is not about what we improvise after the event or after the storm, is what we build before it, around real people and real livelihoods. That means insurance, savings, resilience, infrastructure. It means pre-arranged finance, reliable data, and delivery systems all working together. So when the storm or the event hit, we shouldn't be asking, what do we do now? We should already know who needs help, where the money will come from, and how it will reach them.
Thank you so very much. So my 30 seconds to you would be to reiterate what I said in those beginning remarks. Resilience begins with you. It begins with one, but is sustained by all. Strong communities, shared responsibilities allow us to anticipate, adapt, sustain. That's the only way we are going to advance sustainable community resilience. Thank you very much. And as they say in Jamaica, clap yourself.
I think we can do even a little better for our panelists. And on behalf of the Department of Emergency Management, we just want to present these tokens of appreciation to our panelists, as well as our moderator, so I hope she hasn't gone too far. So in the interest of time, we'll just present them quickly to you. You can remain in your seats, and then we would transition to our lunch break, and then we will resume with our second session for the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And of course, we are looking for our moderator. Please join us as well. This is for you. So at this point, we are getting ready for our lunch break. And if you have the time and you want to pull one of our panelists, have a question or a little discussion, that is possible at this point. Thank you. As if you're still